Good morning. Can you hear me?
You were enslaved in 1865. By 1885, you already had banks and already had acquired millions of acres of land.
We should own and operate and control the economy of our community. We have to become involved in a program of re-education to educate our people into the importance of knowing that when you spend your dollar out of the community in which you live, the community in which you spend your money becomes richer and richer. The community out of which you take your money becomes poorer and poorer.
I don't want people to hear Black Wall Street in Tulsa and think that that was the exception.
Okay.
No, that was the rule. That was not just a Black Wall Street in Tulsa. That was Auburn Avenue in the Edgewood District in Atlanta. That was Harlem, New York. That was Inglewood and places like Watts, and there were places like St. Petersburg, Florida, North Miami. You have went places and built yourself quicker than any other community of people ever.
When black folks do all the right things, there still is an enormous wealth gap, which is attributable to the way in which white supremacy has been manifest in American society.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Black Capital Summit. My name is Simone D. Ross, and I am your host for this morning and for this afternoon. And I am so incredibly excited to be here with you as we all learn together interactively about how we can access capital, how we can pool our dollars together, how we can create wealth, generational wealth together as a community. So one of the most important things that determine whether your business is a success or not is your ability to access capital when you need it. As entrepreneurs, we all want financial flexibility and to really not have any worries financially. I'm going to be really honest with you. As somebody that's in this same boat as you, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who has these big ideas and wants to figure out how to monetize them and create a legacy with them, the thing that keeps me up most at night is cash flow. Cash flow. Everybody in your homes, if you're out on your walk, wherever you are, say it with me. Whew, cash flow. Why does it keep me up at night? Why does it probably keep you up at night? Well, it's because cash is king. And so I'm excited for today's event because we're going to break down all of this, how we as entrepreneurs and as a community can become the kings of our own cash flow. This discussion today is more relevant now than it ever has been. Because when I look at what I think our economic bounce back is going to look like, it's going to be us as people, as a community, figuring out how we take control and access cash. Because as we've seen, there are gross disparities within different communities, marginalized communities, when it comes even to the disbursement of cash. We've seen this with the SBA loan disbursement debacle. We see this when it even comes time for business owners of color to gain access to small business loans. So we need to come together and get the information and be armed with the knowledge that we need and the toolkit that we need to be able to combat these financial colorblind practices. And we have to strategically access capital. So a couple rules for today, not fun rules, but just rules for today so that we can get the most out of the experience. Number one, we've got the live comments. They're in the right hand of your screen. Use those to build community, ask questions, engage with our speakers and our panelists. So the first thing I'm going to ask you all to do as we're engaging and building and learning with one another is to drop in the comments, drop your city, plug your business. We want to know what your business is. And then we also want a toolkit to be able to provide more resources to you. So tell us, what stage is your business in? Is this a new business? Are you in a growth stage? Are you an established business? Or are you, like many of us, reimagining your business and what it will look like? So drop that stuff in the comments. Drop where you're tuning in from. Drop what phase your business is in. Drop what your business is in, so that we can continue to build community with you and form a bond with you over time. Additionally, please like, subscribe, and share. Share everything that you learned today. Tag our speakers, tag the Black Business Initiative, tag our generous sponsors. But again, we're only going to be able to do this together. So let's put the building blocks together so that we can build capital, because cash is king. Now, we wouldn't be here without our sponsors, so we have to give a huge thank you, to our sponsors. This seminar is brought to you by the Black Business Initiative, where we're building this generation of Black entrepreneurs. It's also brought to you by the Block. This is a crowd investing platform designed to help communities invest in themselves. Today's event is sponsored by Trailhead Institute, by the Block, and MetroDEEP. So take a minute and celebrate all of our sponsors and the people who are hosting this event this morning and this afternoon. Now, it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce to you a woman who I greatly admire. She is out here putting in work for our communities to ensure that we have the knowledge and tools that we need to all be successful in whatever we're dreaming. Jice Johnson. As a mother of 3, Jice served a total of 8 years in the U.S. Army, combination of active and guard, leaving as a sergeant after completing a tour to Iraq in support of OIF-2. After starting her family, Jice pursued her bachelor's in business administration and her master's in leadership and management. She graduated cum laude from Amridge University. Her experience working with small business owners has helped to cultivate her knowledge of how important it is for entrepreneurs to have the tools to be most productive, to achieve their goals and dreams, not only for themselves, but for families and the communities they support. Jice is a bad woman, y'all. She founded BBI. She's known for her commitment to the improvement in the lives of entrepreneurs. Jice empowers business owners to take control of their time and push through their fears. Jice has been the recipient of the 2018 AAWMAD Award, 2018 Colorado Black Women for Political Action Emerging Leader Award. She is a 2019 Urban Leadership Foundation Colorado Walk Your Talk Leadership Award, and she is a 2019 Denver Business Journal 40 Under 40 winner. Jice and the work of the Black Business Initiative have been featured in the Urban Spectrum, Westword, and other media such as the Life is Dope podcast. Today, Jice coaches business owners on how to maximize their time to get the results they really want to see. By providing multiple ways to connect, Jice has turned her research into a powerful resource for busy yet unfulfilled entrepreneurs everywhere. Born and raised in Oakland, California, Jice is heavily involved in community and education. She maintains an adjunct position in the business department with the Community College of Aurora, and she serves on the business advisory board of the Community College of Denver. Please welcome the incomparable, the amazing, the brilliant, and the badass Jice Johnson.
Thank you. Y'all, let me just tell y'all, I'm super elated to be here. So welcome and thank you for being here on your Saturday. Truly, I can't tell you how honored I am that you've dialed into the Black Business Initiative's platform and taking your time on a Saturday to learn both about our history and about our future. And for those of you that know me, this is like the first time that we're doing something online. So, it is what it is, right? We are in this time and things are changing and we're here to change with the times. I miss seeing so many of you in person. It's been, so long. And just know that for my, community, especially here in Denver and also for some of you in Detroit, I usually make regular trips out to Detroit. I miss seeing some of your faces. I miss seeing all of your faces, not just some of you. But I am super excited to be here. For those of you who don't know me, for those of you who are just tuning in, I am Jice Johnson. I'm the founder and the CBO of the Black Business Initiative. And this is a project and an organization that began about 6 years ago with the mission to build a strong economic base in the Black community. The title and the topic of this conversation today is Black Capital. And if you're not familiar with where the idea of Black capital came from, I'm kind of using it in jest, and I'm kind of using it in a facetious kind of way, because the actual term Black capital really began to be popular and was really used around the Nixon era. And that's important to note because Nixon was not a president that was for us. And yet he used a lot of our information. He used a lot of our rhetoric. He used a lot of our verbiage to promote this idea of empowerment around the Black community, essentially pulling itself up by its bootstraps through this idea of Black capital. So it's important for us to know where our history lies and how this plays out in so many ways and in so many forms and fashion when it comes to even the kinds of language that we use, right? And so I believe that we can, use this type of rhetoric and create something that it is actually supposed to be, but we have to know where it starts first, right? So, first of all, let me give y'all my disclaimer and my warning, okay? I cuss. I don't try and get up here and just, act like I'm uber professional. So if I throw out a swear word or two, please forgive me. For those of you who are used to people, presenting themselves in a certain way, I stay true to me. That being said, The way that we have turned and changed certain verbiage and rhetoric for ourselves as we have grown our community, right? And just as controversial as this is like as controversial as the N-word is, right? So you've got some people who use it and say it in the way that resonates within the community in a cultural way, and then you've got some who are like, hey, don't use that term, that was used as a demeaning term against us. Well, so was Black capital. But I'm here to say that I think we can, change Black capital for the good. So let me kind of break down a little bit about this. And just to give you some historical perspective as we continue to move forward in the conversation, because I can assure you that context is key. And if we don't have an understanding of context and we don't have an understanding of where we've come from inside of our community, it will leave us in a certain detrimental place. So I want to stop right there first and let you know that in the description box, you can download our resource guide and our program, which also includes notes for this program. So just know that is there for you, and that is there. I strongly encourage you to download that. There are a lot of resources in there that we'll be referencing. But going back to the Nixon era, it's really important for us to know, and it's really important for us to understand that that capital or the economy really controls every single facet of our life. And I'm going to come back to that. But during the Nixon era, he really took a hold in order to appease a lot of the Black activists. He took a hold of things like Black empowerment and started to push this idea that Black capital was the way for us to come out of the oppression that we were facing. And I'm here to tell you that that's not accurate. And as much as I'm a person, and if you go back and look through the history of the Black Business Initiative and you look at the history of who I am and what I represent and what I bring to the table, I talk about building collective power. I talk about pulling our dollars together in a cooperative manner. And although that is important, it is not the binding thing. It is not the thing that is going to get us over the hump. And so I want you to know that I'm going to challenge you a little bit today as I talk about some of the things that we need to do and some of the historical accuracies that have led us to this point and to this place today. So as I mentioned, the Black Business Initiative began 6 years ago with the mission to build a strong economic base in the Black community. And why is it important for us to build a strong economic base? Well, in one word, capitalism. That is the society that we live in, be it good or bad or indifferent. Capitalism is what runs this economy. And every single day of your life is covered by the economics of this economy. Whether you care about education, whether you care about housing, criminal justice, social justice, food justice, the health disparities that we are clearly seeing highlighted inside of the coronavirus pandemic, all of those things are controlled by economics. And just to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, economics is how a society uses its resources to produce and distribute and consume its goods and services. And we do this through policy. It is so important for us to understand and recognize how important policy is to our everyday life. And in doing that, I want you to know that anyone who is telling you that politics is not for us is quoting you bullshit. How we use our political leverage is what counts. And I would assess that the Black community has not done well with using our political leverage. However, policy is what governs our day-to-day lives. And so it's very important for us to play an active role in what that looks like. It's very important for us to play an active role in the political climate in order for us to overturn the disparities that have been pushed on us. So I want to frame today's conversation by taking a look back and then bringing us very quickly to today. I'm a firm believer that context is important, and it's very important in terms of how we address a situation, but more important in terms of how we come up with the proper solutions. At the abolishment of slavery, Blacks own 0.5% of the wealth of this country. And that makes sense because we were enslaved. And at that time, we weren't able to own anything. And so it only made sense that we owned an extremely little amount of the wealth of this country. However, 150 years later, we have not moved the needle on this. And this is an economic failure of cataclysmic proportion. This is not an okay situation. And I don't think that we understand that because in the media, we see people like LeBron James and we see Michael Jordans and we see Oprah Winfrey's and we see Bay and Jay, right? And so we don't really understand that as a whole group, we do not have wealth built. Matter of fact, we were actually on track to have zero wealth inside of our communities within the next 2 decades, roughly 2 to 3 decades. And with every recession that hits, we actually speed that point up. So I think it's very important that we recognize that as a group, and what that means for us as a group, right? And not necessarily just looking at the individual. So we have not moved this needle. So what I want you to know is if you take nothing else away from today, and I want to be clear that I want you to take a lot away from today. But if you take nothing else from today, okay, we need to let go of the idea that capitalism, that more financial literacy, that doing the right thing is going to fix what policy created. The situation that we are in inside of Black America is a policy created vacuum. Your personal tenacity can move your personal needle forward, but it is not going to move us together as a whole. And quite frankly, it may not move your children. Data tells us that our children will likely lose our wealth by the 2nd generation. So if you are fortunate enough to move the needle in your own personal legacy, in your own family, it is a really good possibility that your children will lose that wealth. It is an even better possibility that your grandchildren will lose that wealth. And that's not because of our own personal abilities. That is because we are inside of a system that is not set up for us to win. Matter of fact, it is deliberately set up for us to lose. And just to be clear about how likely that is, it is 70 to 90% likely that your 2nd generation will lose your wealth, that your 3rd generation will lose your wealth. So we have to understand that this is a system. And so while this seminar is largely focused on how you, your business, and your family can make the proper money moves that you need in order for you to move to your next level, we can never, ever forget that the larger issue at hand is what it looks like for us to move our group forward. Because if we're ever going to really talk about what it looks like to build intergenerational wealth, we have to know that what we do today can secure our future generations. And what we know for a fact today is that what we do today does not, and in fact will not, secure our future generations. So I want to talk for a moment about the idea of meritocracy. And if you're not familiar with what this looks like or what this is, it's the idea, it's the notion that what you do is how you earn. It shows the outcome of your life, right? So if you work hard, if you do the right things, if you educate yourself, you too can experience the American dream. How many of you feel like that's bullshit? How many of you feel like you've done the right things? How many of you have gone and gotten a college education? How many of you have gone after the good jobs? How many of you have gotten married and had 2.5 kids, a dog, and a picket fence, and still feel and see the struggle? This is by and large because, again, the system, this is not built on meritocracy. This is not built by your merit. And I don't want to confuse that with or put that into this idea that you cannot personally succeed, right? So keep striving, keep doing the right things. This is not to discourage you or say, give up. This is not to tell you, don't do those right things. But I do want to acknowledge that the white wealth class and the white middle class was not built off of meritocracy, although they believe that it is, although that they say that it is. And this is literally propaganda at its finest. The idea that because this is taught to both Black and white. So the idea that we are taught that if we work hard, we will succeed, and that our success is based off of merit is propaganda. And it fails to acknowledge the deeply systemic hand that has deliberately kept the Black community in a state of despair. Study after study shows that a significant amount of data shows that the Black community faces grave disparities even when monitoring across all other areas of success. And what this means is, if you have a degree, if you have purchased a home, if you are married, none of these things guarantee your success inside of this country. In plain terms, this means that the Black man, the Black woman, the Black child face disparities regardless. If we are educated, if we are homeowners, if we are Christian, if we speak proper English, even if we have a great credit score. So we have been told that the answer is to pool our dollars together. And the truth is that we've been working to do that for 150 years. And although there's been a strong push for segregated banking systems in hopes that it could and that it would provide an opportunity for success and for prosperity, our banks have never, ever stood a chance against housing segregation, aka redlining, and violent Jim Crow and government credit policies that literally have built the white American middle class. Or did you think they did that by merit? The white American middle class was given to them. It was literally handed over to them through policy, through allowing them to purchase homes, to build equity inside of their homes, to access credit that we were by law not allowed to do. And so I want you to take note of that, because an important thing to understand here is that most of our laws today are written in what we would consider race neutral terminology, but they have not always been that way. So post-slavery, you had laws that directly had race written into those laws, and then it was removed, but it was never fixed. So when we talk about reparations, it's important for us to understand why the push for reparations is so important, because the wrongs were never righted. So we were literally written out of the law. Now today, and this started in the Nixon era, now today what they tell you is these laws don't discriminate against you. They're not written in any color. So anyone who does the right thing can have success by following these laws, by following these rules and regulations. And again, I'm just going to say bullshit. Following the abolishment of slavery, instead of 40 acres and a mule, do you know what we were given? We were given a bank. We were given the Freedmen's Bank, which was a glorified savings account, because through government policy, and let me be clear, the Freedmen's Bank is the only bank that was built through government policy that was actually written in to policy. That was a glorified savings account. We were unable to lend money. How do banks make their money? So when the Freedmen's Bank was created, you could make your deposits in the bank, but they couldn't make a loan to you. So if you know the story of the Freedmen's Bank, the long story short, it crashed and burned. But it was highly successful initially, because so many of us came in and poured our dollars inside of the Freedmen's Bank, only to find that it wasn't a safe haven for our bank and there was no way for it to grow. And if we understand how banking works, banking multiplies money. It takes your money in, it puts it back out, and it makes interest on your money. But our banks weren't able to do that through policy. So it's important to know that while our banks were started, and while we see them in such good faith, right, our banks were literally erected from the ashes of burning crosses and extreme violence of Jim Crow, and they naturally hold a place of symbolism and pride inside of our communities. I can assure you that the time for symbolism is over. The idea, the fallacy of Black capital is a ploy that is literally dating back 150 years. Nixon used strong Black empowerment rhetoric to ease Black activists. And I think it's important that we recognize that our activism should never be eased. Because 150 years later, I can assure you that as we walk through these steps of what it looks like for you to gain access to capital, to build your business, to purchase your homes, to create and amass wealth, I can assure you that it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to find that there is a hiccup somewhere. And the reason why banking plays such a big role in this, and why we must address banks, and why we're addressing lenders, and why we're bringing these things into play and coming together, why it's important to continuously scream at the government and at the banks, is because the banks is who controls the distribution of credit. The banks control the distribution of capital through the policy set by the government. And they think they're going to continue to appease us by talking about how we can do for ourselves, despite how much they did to create the white middle class. It wasn't the white middle class created their wealth. It was the government pushed wealth into the white middle class to create it. That's what came first. So it's very important. I want to bring this up onto the screen because this is so relevant. There is still redlining going on today. And I'm not going to come too far off my script, but you're absolutely right. As late as 2012, both Wells Fargo and Bank of America settled out of court because they had damning evidence that they were redlining and pushing predatory loans onto our community. And what's interesting is during the entire 2008 crash, you know who didn't push predatory loans? The Black banks, which there are only 20 left in the country. But we're so quick to chastise our own and to talk about what they're not able to do, not knowing the plight that the Black banks have had to work through in order to just survive. There used to be hundreds of Black banks. There are now 20 left in the country. And they struggle because the lack of capital that's inside of our communities is so anemic that they can't afford to sustain themselves. And yet every chance we get, we bash how bad they are. And we turn our money and put our dollars inside of banks that have systemically oppressed us, have redlined us, and have prevented us from accessing the capital that we need to grow. Matter of fact, this process has been happening for decades and decades and decades. It's literally extractive. So what they used to do was they would open up a bank inside the community. They would allow you to deposit your money inside of that community. They would not lend to you inside of that community, but instead would take our deposits from our community and lend them inside of the white community, literally extracting dollars out of the Black community, taking them down and putting them inside of the white community. This is the banking industry. And we support the banks most that do this, and don't support the banks who, in the best of times that they could have been attempting to take advantage of us, did not. So I think it's interesting in what we do and how we do these things. But I want to come back and pull myself back on point so I can stay on time here. Every administration since Nixon has used this empty policy and this empty rhetoric. I want to encourage you to read more of this book. This is The Color of Money. And this book right here really breaks down quite a bit of what's going on inside of our communities. And I don't want to butcher her last name, but Mirza, I believe it's Baraharan. She states so eloquently that these injustices against our community have been justified for 400 years. In the 18th century, Christianity told the white community that they had a divine right to own Black bodies. In the 19th century, you had botched science in the form of Darwinism who states that the survival of the fittest shows that natural selection said that it was nature's will for the Black community to be scraping the bottom of the fucking barrel. In the 20th century, despite the government literally giving land, mortgages, and credit, effectively creating the white middle class as we know it today, we're told that any government intervention on behalf of the Black community would be unjust and inefficient. It is a myth that as a group, we can overcome 400 years of systemic and violent oppression by funneling our oppressed dollars into a weak and extractive system. We can't even take a jog. Hashtag Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon, Sandra. Need I go on? And as much as I talk about pooling our dollars together, as much as I encourage you to become financially literate, I want you to understand that that is not going to be the only answer, that we have to arm ourselves to the teeth in order to come up to the government and demand the policy not be race neutral, but instead to overturn the incredibly racist policies that were once put in place. So while today's program aims to help you, the individual, we, the people, must walk forward eyes wide open, prepared, especially in these desperate times, to fight the infusion and redistribution of resources into our communities if we ever have a hope of standing tall on this soil. The current COVID-19 pandemic is highlighting disparities that have existed for 150 years. And as we shift our focus to what you as the individual can do, I'll leave you with this. 60% of the Black community is unbanked or underbanked. This means that we are using fringe banks, which are debt traps. We have high fees, high interest, lower home values, and lower wages. These were all done systemically through policy. We pay more for credit and financial services. And when things get rough, as they are now, they crush us. In 2008, we lost 53% of our wealth, and we had not reached pre-2008 numbers. 12 years later, be clear that the Black community has never recovered from the 2008 recession, and now we have COVID-19. So it's time for us to get serious, and it's time for us to get strategic, and it's time for us to get political about our future. Thank you.
Wow. I did not lie to you all. I told you that Jice was a badass who chronically commits acts of badassery. And more important than her being a complete and total badass, Jice is an unbridled, unbothered community advocate who's willing to use her voice, use her education, her research, and her experience to stand in the gap for all of us. I think the biggest thing that came out of what Jice said is that it can't be just one person. It can't just be Jice or BBI or any of our sponsors or By the Block that's standing in the gap to ensure that we achieve some level of financial equity in a system that was built in the beginning to never provide equitable opportunities for us. We have to do this as a collective. So many of you in the chat said, well, how do we ensure that our kids aren't having the same event 30 years from today? How do we ensure that our kids aren't experiencing the same economic disparities? Well, the answer is very clear, as Jice clearly stated. We have to move the needle, not as an individual, but we have to move the needle as a collective. We have to disrupt a system that was always built to keep us out. We have to demand a seat at the table. We have to clearly blow up this system by calling out the policies that were meant to disenfranchise us, meant to keep us out, and meant to continue to perpetuate the economic disparities we continue to see today. So I think that was a good precursor, and thank you, Jice, to how impactful and powerful this event will be. So I know that you've got some friends that need to hear this word. Can I get an amen? So what I'm going to ask you to do is invite your friends now, shoot them the link, send them the Facebook or YouTube link, and tell them to join in this dialogue. Because again, it's all about the collective. So I want to shout out a sponsor, Trailhead Institute. Trailhead is a sustaining force behind the boots on the ground for public health. Trailhead is the leading, supportive, and empowering catalyst that enables communities to make important decisions and enact critical initiatives aimed at delivering healthier futures and more positive environments. As a strategic partner, Trailhead allows users to leverage and to take full advantage of our personnel, services, and the full depth of our broad expertise while maintaining full control over their projects. Through fund management, program development, and strategic support, Trailhead helps people and organizations work together as a unified collective with the focused objective of realizing better public health for all. I am so incredibly excited to present to you our next speaker, Linda P. Smith. Linda P. Smith was raised by her father as one of 12 siblings through his work as a serial entrepreneur. His example of what entrepreneurship consisted of and how lucrative it could be set the tone for what she was going to become in life. Employed by her sister's perfume company early on, Lynn became smitten with entrepreneurship. Through the love and the thrill of being her own boss and directing her own destiny, she started her first company, becoming the very first African-American woman owner of a transit company to provide transportation during Super Bowl 2010 in Miami Gardens, Florida. In 2012, President Barack Obama signed bipartisan legislation called the Jobs Act of 2012 that ushered in the era of crowdfunding. Crowdfunding quickly grew to be a billion-dollar industry in the United States, and she used her entrepreneurial spirit to seize this opportune moment in time to create the first African-American-owned crowdfunding portal, BBNomics, BBNomics. Driven by her passion of helping other people to achieve their financial freedom, Lynn developed By the Block. Her goal at By the Block is to help cultivate the economic development of local communities through entrepreneurship, real estate development, and crowd investing. Among her many titles, you can call her mother, wife, sister, social activist, daughter, friend, real estate investor, and businesswoman. Please welcome Lynn Smith. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you so much, Simone, for that introduction. Thank you so much for joining us today. Oh my gosh. Are you guys pumped up from what Jice was talking about? Oh my gosh. Now, I don't know how do I follow that up, but I'm going to attempt to. Thank you so much for joining us. Black Capital is about us using the resources that we currently have. And of course, understanding the history of capital as a Black woman or a Black man in America, understand the history, the policies, the practices that have affected us and put us in the current situation that we're in, right? So that being said, as long as we understand the history, we understand that we also have to challenge that with action. And that's where I come in, right? That's where I come in to bring you, to make you understand what capital is, what it looks like for you as a business owner, as an investor, as an entrepreneur, or as just an individual operating under the system of America, and being able to use resources that are available today for you to actually implement creating wealth and holding on to that wealth for future generations. One of my biggest things, or one of the things that I talk about a lot with anybody who has a chance to follow any of my social media, is the fact that we're building for 100 years from now. So as Jice mentioned, we do have where part of our capital or part of our wealth building actually it doesn't last generations, right? It only lasts one, maybe two generations. And so what we want to do is make sure that we are that we're creating businesses and endeavors in ventures that will build, that we can create and last 100 years from now. It's going to take action on our end. It's going to take policies, and of course, it's going to take strategic things that we're going to apply as a community to make sure that 100 years from now, the things that we're doing and the wealth that we're building will be here 3, 4, 5 generations later. Okay, so the very first question that we have is why? What is capital? Black capital is the name. What is capital? Capital is, for all intents and purposes, it's money, right? It's money. It's money. It's assets. So we want to make sure that you are that you understand that. You want to have capital, having Black capital or having capital as a community helps you to understand that this is what you help to build the future of your business, of your assets, and grow your assets in the future. So all businesses must have capital, right? Every single business, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as an individual, you have to have something that you're using to exchange for your asset. Because we live in a capitalistic society, we want to make sure that we have that. We have to at least have capital, right? How we're going to build capital, how we're going to maintain capital. There's several different ways that you can maintain, build capital, right? And so there's different forms of capital. There's debt, there's equity, and there's working capital. So I'm jumping a little ahead, but I want you to know that that's kind of where that's where we're going. We want to break down those assets for you and make sure that you understand that you can use any of those three to be able to build your wealth and have enough capital for to build the wealth for 100 years from now. All right. So if you're in the comment section, type 100 years from now, because that's our goal, right? That is our goal. Whatever we're doing today, 100 years from now, for it to be around, and for the next generation to make sure that it can build off of or the next several generations can build off of what we're creating today. All right. So to break down, what is debt capital, right? So I'm sorry, we're going to go next slide. Okay. So the cost of capital, let's do that. Let's talk about the cost of capital. So one of the things that Jice mentioned is the fact that we are unbanked, right? 60% of us are unbanked. So if we are unbanked, if we're at the lowest marginal level, okay, so here's some of the things that we're up against, right? Our income level is lower, and we're unbanked. We pay higher interest rates. So in the long term, in the long run, what will essentially happen? We pay more for everything, even though we have systematic oppression that have caused us to be in the situation that we're in. We pay more. We pay a premium because we're at the bottom level. So, and if you can wrap your head around that, to understand that just because I may not have the banking, I may not have a bank account, I'm going to pay more to extract my money, because one, I'm taking my money, when I get my check, I'm going to cash it at a check cashing store. That check cashing store is going to charge a premium. And so, as opposed to it being directly deposited in my bank and me being able to withdraw it. So there's a cost associated to us, to having or being at the lowest level in the capital pool. So that's one thing that we definitely have to challenge, right? We have to make sure that we are putting ourselves in a situation that we're not underbanked and underfinanced, as well as paying more to borrow the money or to have the money that we have. Or the fact that even just as simple as your local grocery store, if you're in a predominantly Black neighborhood, when you're in a predominantly Black neighborhood, the items in your store or the corner store cost more than if you were able to go to a larger chain. So you're paying more. So there's a cost to the capital that we have. So we're paying more. We're paying more, locally. We're paying more, through banking situation. We're paying more for our food. So it costs us more to be unbanked and have less capital. So understand that dynamic. That's going to be a little frustrating, right? And understand that we have to challenge that, right? And of course, if you want to go a little bit further, if you don't want to go to that local, you don't want to go to that local grocery store or the local corner store. You're going to have to drive to be able to get to somewhere else. So that's cost. That's gas, right? So you're paying in gas for that. So all of these things are why we are paying more to be able to have the capital. So our goal here is to help you obtain the lowest cost to access the capital. So we have to be able to put ourselves in a situation where we do have bank accounts, and whether it be opening up at a local credit union, getting a referral from somebody that have an account with a credit union to be able to get in. We have to make sure that we get that number of 60% unbanked, to a lower number. So whatever that is, whatever we have to do as a collective to be able to get that number a little lower, we need to do that. Okay. So And from a business standpoint, you want to make sure that that you're lowering your cost, you're lowering you're lowering the production. You are outsourcing what needs to be outsourced. You're not putting so much pressure on yourself as a business owner, so you to spend more. So the other aspect of that, when it comes to business, a lot of people have a tendency to, I know as a business owner in our community, we have a tendency to frown upon our businesses and not understand that they pay a higher premium to be in business. So that cost sometimes has to be passed on. So business is all about profit. It's all about profit margin. So if we're paying more for the products, if we're paying more to use the money, if we're paying higher interest, if we're borrowing money as business owners, so do you understand that that's going to show up in our prices as well as business owners? So all of these things play a role. So I understand from a consumer standpoint, I don't want to pay more for a pencil that I would pay from somebody else, but understand that as a business owner, as a Black business owner, that Black business owner is already paying the premium just for having that business. So a lot of times that is incorporated in the price that we're seeing as business owners. So I hope that helps a little bit. So we're going to move to the next slide. And so as I wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of the three major types of capital. So the three major types is debt. Okay, if you all know, you borrow money, and once you borrow money, you in order to borrow that money, you pay an interest on that money. Okay, so that's one type of capital. The second type of capital is equity. Equity is when equity can be in the form of shares. It can be, it's used in the form of it's distributed in the form of shares. So you earn interest on the shares that you own. Next slide. Then so okay, can come from several forms, but as I mentioned, the most private, there's the private equity and public equity, but nonetheless, they're distributed as shares. Okay, guys. So the other part of it, the other part of our third capital is working capital, which is any money that you earn from your business or from inventory, from payments, and as well as current assets as a business owner. So working capital is anything that you have that you purchased in order to be able to build your business. Okay, so what we want to make sure is that you understand those three different types of capitals and be able to have those working for your business in a very strategic way. Okay, and as an individual, we want to make sure that you understand that and work and have those working for you in a strategic way. So you want to make sure that you're building your cash. You definitely have some cash reserves. Definitely, if you're in the unbanked category, you're moving yourself up to to a bank category, because we want to lower the cost, what it costs for us to actually have access to capital. We already understand that there are that there are issues or there's restrictions to what we have our hands or have access to, but when we do get access to it, majority of the time we're paying more for it. Okay, one of the reasons and that's for me specifically as an entrepreneur, one of the reasons for starting By the Block is to help build or offer individuals or businesses in our communities a way to access money at a lower cost, one, and then of course giving our community access to those to those businesses in the form of shares, in the form of equity, in the form of loans. So that's what By the Block is about, for those that may not know. But it is a vehicle to allow us to invest in each other and build equity, as well as lend money to each other at a reasonable rate. So we're not necessarily paying for the or although we can use several different forms of working capital or debt or equity, but it's one resource for us to be able to get the capital from our community members, not necessarily banking institutions and so on and so forth, from our community members, and actually have a stake in the companies that we're giving the capital to. So in essence, we can use all of these forms to be able to build our wealth, right? And we want to be able to use those forms to build wealth 100 years from now. But make sure that you're, if you're in that unbanked category, if you don't get anything from what I'm saying, if you're in that unbanked category, you want to make sure that you get into the bank category. You want to not have to have, your paycheck being, given to you in a paper form, and you taking it to a check cashing store and paying that cost to basically, get the money that you work for. You want to make sure that you are, you're building, inventory in your business that, lowering your inventory, lowering your costs as a business owner, making sure that, you find ways to lower your costs. If that means outsourcing some of the things, if that means, being able to reduce the items that you sell, cut the items that are not necessarily selling on your, as a business owner. If you have a lot of inventory and you have a lot of items that are not really moving on your business, cut some of those items. Focus on one item. Focus on one item until it turns over, right? If that's, one book for $1, as an example, focus on that item until that item moves and you're comfortable. You bring that cost down, you focus on selling that item, that one item, over and over. Focus on the marketing of that item for you to be able to really hone in on building, your business's working capital or your individual working capital. All right. So with that being said, please make sure that you are, again, getting out of the unbanked category. If you are unbanked, make sure that you're putting yourself in a position where you're not paying a premium. There's all these predatory options that are available specifically to our community, check cashing, car, title loans, the debt, payday loans. All of these are available to our communities, and these are all, predatory in nature, and they're costing us money as individuals, as business owners. They're costing us money. When we do get access to capital, or there are certain lenders that will allow you to, they'll give you capital based on your cash flow or the amount of business that you have coming in, and they're basically taking a percentage of the money that your future earnings. That's a little bit higher, as opposed to being able to go to a bank and say, hey, look, I have this business and I need, $100,000 to be able to run my business for the next 6 months, and being told, no, you don't necessarily fit that criteria. So all of these things will put you in a better position to get into that category, because that's where we want to be as business owners, right? We want to be able to go to the bank. We want to have the credit score that exemplifies that we can, that we can pay this money back. Our business can support us, you lending us this money. That's ideally where we would like to be. But prior to that, we have to take the steps necessary to be able to put us in that category. And the first step is knowing what that is for us, what that is on our balance sheets, making sure that we're using proper accounting measures. Make sure we know what our profit margin is, our inventory, what does it cost for marketing. These are all things that in our businesses, the cost to acquire every customer. These are all things that are necessary when we go to a bank and we want to be able to get the funding necessary. Okay, make sure that you are you're putting yourself in that position as a business owner, as an individual. The very thing that you do when you want to go buy a home, or you want to, you're trying to get a home, the very things that they ask you to do, they want to see certain things, 2 years of employment. They want to see that you filed your tax returns. All of these things are necessary as business owners as well, so we can make sure that we have enough, or we can go to the banks and be, capital ready, So that being said, so we're going to move on. Thank you so much for joining us. have a great day. Thank you.
Lynn, thank you. I cannot thank you enough for that really wealth building blocks. I think the biggest thing, you guys, to take away is move from unbanked to banked. So put that in the comments. Let's get banked, y'all. It's time to get banked. Just some quick information about By the Block, because I know all of our interests are piqued right now because you have so many jewels to share with us. By the Block is a web-based platform that enables developers to raise capital for real estate projects in their community with help from the crowd, removing the need for banks and venture capitalists. It also allows the crowd to make debt or equity investments in opportunities that were historically difficult to access. By the Block is an alternative funding source and investment vehicle to help everyone build wealth. So please learn more about By the Block. Thank you so much for your knowledge, Lynn. So it seems like there's probably been some new, we're going to call it family members today, because this is like the family reunion that probably got canceled this summer because of COVID. So we're going to count this, the Black Capital Summit, as the family reunion where we come together as a collective to unite. So just a couple housekeeping things. If you are new to the chat, if you're new to the event, please drop in the comments where you're from, put your business in the comments as well. And also tell us what stage you are in your business so that we can better direct you to resources in our follow-up. There is so much dialogue coming in the live comments, so please, please, please keep them coming. And thank you for being so engaging and interactive. You are making this event even greater than we imagined it would be. As you have questions that come into the live comments, the team at BBI will then put your questions into a larger document, and we will do our best to answer them either today or to provide you the resources that you need. And yes, let's get banked. So it is now the time where I am going to turn the mic over to the woman who brought this all together, the unbothered, unbridled Jice. And go take it away, Jice.
All right, y'all. So we're going to talk about the 5 C's of credit. And I don't want you to turn away. Sometimes this can feel like this is like the not sexy topic, right? But I want to get into what it looks like for us to build credit, or what it looks like for us to access credit. And then more importantly, or in addition to that, why we've struggled, right? And so I talked about these things being deeply systemic. And while I'm talking here, I'm going to try and pull up my screen again. So, you know, I talked about these things being deeply systemic and deeply historic. And that's very true. So give me 1 second here so I can pull up this PowerPoint, and we're going to keep talking through these 5 C's. All right, so we're going to talk about the 5 C's of credit. And again, just stick with me here, because one, this is how you're going to access credit, right, is getting these 5 C's. And most importantly, this is how you're going to access the least expensive credit, right? So Lynn just talked about the fact that capital cost, right? So you don't just get money for nothing. It costs money to access other people's money. So in that space, we're going to look at these 5 C's. And one of the things that is really clear here to me is that the vast majority of us are often uneducated about these things, and that matters. So I mentioned earlier that banks play a huge role in inequality because they are responsible for the distribution of capital by way of credit, right? And the policy is written in very race-neutral language, but the history tells a different story. So we're going to talk through these things, but I also want you to understand that at each point, I want to talk about where these histories lie and why these things have really why we've really struggled in these places. So the first C of the 5 C's is character. Okay, so this is also known as your credit. Okay, now your credit history is basically your track record or reputation for repaying a debt. So when they're talking about your character, this is basically how you're known, right? This is their way of determining how well or who you are, how well they know you, et cetera, et cetera. So why this is important. And I do want to acknowledge that we're going to talk about some avenues to access credit that don't rely on your credit score. And so when you are lacking a credit score, as many of us are, first of all, again, 60% of us being unbanked or underbanked, many of us have no credit. Many of us have poor credit, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But when you lack credit, some lenders may be open to looking at letters of recommendation and things of that sort that help determine your reputation, right? But when someone doesn't know you, the first thing that they're looking at is they're looking at your credit to determine your reputation and your history and your ability to repay debts. We need to know when we're talking about credit, again, a significant amount of us don't have credit. We don't like to talk about this inside of our community. We like to act like everything is all good. Okay. It's not. We already know what the numbers say. The numbers play out that many of us struggle in the credit area. 670 is considered good credit. Okay. 699 and below is considered poor. 579 and below is just considered bad. And many of us don't have credit at all because we're taught that credit is bad. And I'll touch back on that a little bit later. But it's very important that you build and or repair your credit. Your credit ties into more than just your ability to access capital. It also ties into things like your pricing on health insurance, car insurance, utilities. This determines whether or not what you're paying for utilities, as well as if you have a deposit for utilities and things of that sort. So I want to be clear that there are a lot of reasons that we struggle to obtain credit, even when we have good credit. So this is one of the first things that people look at when they say, well, I wasn't able to get a loan with the bank, right? The first thing is, oh, well, I have a good credit score. So, this sucks, right? Like they're being racist. Yes. But also no, there's other things that tie into this. So we have to know that credit is a factor, but credit is literally not the determining factor. So you have people who are working hard to get to good credit, but yet they're missing many other things that tie into this. So that's what we're going to talk about the rest of this. That's why there are 5 C's. There's not 1 C. It's not just your credit. There are 5 C's. And these things all work together when you want to look at obtaining the lowest cost credit. So again, there are other ways that you can obtain credit. There are other ways that you can access capital. But anytime you're missing any one of these 5 C's, that's when you're going to obtain credit that costs more. And because we're often missing at least one, if not more, of these 5 C's, that's why that's one of the reasons why our credit costs more. But these are again very historical. So it's important to know that you need to get your credit in order for more than just accessing capital, okay? Again, download that resource guide. There are people in there who can help you build your credit. If you are a business that can help build your credit, feel free to drop your links, right? Like we want to make sure that you're promoting yourself and give you an opportunity to promote that here on the live. But go ahead and acknowledge anyone who or any resources that help you build your credit. We do have some of those in that resource guide. The resource guide is in the descriptions. You can download that, and there's resources that are in there for you to utilize. So the first one is credit, okay, or character, but that's basically credit. The second thing is capacity. Now, in basic terms, capacity means, can you repay this debt? This is literally one of the biggest areas. Now, I'm not going to get into any sort of a education conversation, okay? I do have my degrees. I also have student loan debt, and I can assure you how real this is. In basic terms, what this means is, can you repay the debt? This is determined by something called your debt to income ratio. A lot of people are not familiar with this term, DTI, or debt to income ratio. What this is, or how you calculate this, is you want to look at your total income, okay? Your total income. And you want to look at the total amount of your monthly debt payments. If you have a mortgage, that's a debt payment. If you have a car note, that's a debt payment. If you have credit cards, that's a debt payment. If you have student loans, that is a debt payment. Even if your student loans are deferred, inside of your credit, it's considered a debt payment. And that's very key because with the different types of repayment plans that they have available for student loans, there are many people who aren't paying on their student loans, but the payment amount is still being counted in your debt to income ratio. Now, 50% or less is what most lenders are looking at. They actually would prefer something smaller than that. But I want to put this in really plain English terms, okay? If you make $1,000 a month and you pay, including your mortgage, including your car note, including any credit card debts, medical debts that are being reported, things of that sort, all of that can come together. And if it equals more than $500, you are not lendable. So when a lender is looking at how they're going to give you access to credit, they're going to say, here's what the payment is going to look like. If we add this payment to the rest of your debts, is it going to equal more than that $500? Again, assuming you make 1,000, right? So you make 1,000, they're going to take everything that you owe and they're going to include their potential payment and they're going to add it all together. And if that equals more than 500, you will not qualify for the loan, even if you have good credit. So you can have a good credit score, but you might be paying too much in debt. And then if you want to look at what you're paying in that debt, your student loans are going to be a part of that, even if you're not paying on your student loans, even if you have an income-based repayment plan, even if you have a deferred payment, they're still going to count that payment plan. So for some of you who are going out there and you want to be the doctors of the world and you want to have a $250,000 student loan debt, more power to you. You're going to struggle in so many areas to obtain credit, even to purchase a home. And so all of these things are layered, right? Why are you going to struggle to purchase a home? Well, you won't make enough to purchase a home. There's income inequalities in this country. That's not even an arguable statement, right? That's fact. So you're going to purchase to purchase something as basic as a home if you include things like your student loan debt in a lot of cases. So these are things that we should be aware of, is this thing called this debt to income ratio. And because oftentimes we're not aware of it, we really struggle to figure out why we don't qualify for certain things, even when we've worked really hard to obtain or maintain a good credit score. So your first one is character. Your second one is capacity. Your third one is capital. Capital, again, is money, 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 right? So this is things like down payments, your ability to have a down payment, stocks, retirements, IRAs, and just cold hard cash, right? Capital is money. Now, first of all, your position is strengthened when you have liquid assets or when you have cash. So you might be asking, why do I need your cash if I have my own? So we've been lied to, guys. We've been taught not to borrow money, right? This is even looking from a biblical aspect. We've been taught that debt is bad. The use of biblical texts like, the borrower shall be a slave to the lender, right? These types of things have told us that it is bad to borrow money or to not be able to pay something out in cash. I see this rhetoric all the time. First of all, I think that you should have options. So you should have the ability to pay something in cash and you should have the ability to borrow money. And that's important. That's a very important distinction. We are oftentimes pigeonholed into one thing or another, and we need to have options, okay? But the other thing is that debt in and of itself is not bad. Expensive debt is bad. Debt with bad terms is bad. Debt without profit is bad. Debt in and of itself is not bad. It can actually help you leverage the money that you have now, right? So this is a huge myth that you only go into debt if you have no money. That's a huge myth. Debt is when you need more or you need to leverage what you already have. So let me give you an example. If you had $100,000, let's say you worked and you saved up and now you have $100,000. Now you're ready to buy a home. You have a few options. You can put your whole $100,000 down on a house. Now you own the house and you have no cash. Or you can put $20,000 on the home, which means you will borrow the other $80,000 from the bank. That's leverage because now you have $80,000 in your hand. You still have the home. The home is still appreciating. You're still paying down on the debt. So you still have equity, right? So again, debt without profit, that's a bad debt. Debt that makes money, that's an okay debt. But you also have $80,000 in cash. What can you do with the rest of your cash? That means you can purchase a second property. Maybe you find another $100,000 property and you put down another $20,000. Maybe you invested in stocks. Maybe you start a business. Maybe you invested in someone else's business. Maybe, you know, there's a lot of other things that you can do with your money. So having money and being able to leverage it is a lot better in a lot of cases, not in every case, right? But in a lot of cases, it can definitely help to improve your financial position if you have 3 or 4 houses and you still have that $100,000 in cash instead of having one house and that $100,000 in cash. Or no cash now, and now you have one house, right? So it's very important that we think about what this looks like, but understand that even if you have a good credit score, and even if your debt is relatively low, if you come to the table with no skin in the game, you come to the table with no cash, they're still going to be a little bit iffy on you. They're still going to be a little bit iffy. And again, I want to point out that we have lower, credit scores, right? We have, we have lower credit scores. We have, the wage gap exists, right? And so we have some of these other spaces and we have some of these other places that obtaining capital makes it difficult for us. If you are a first generation college graduate and you were able to go out there and get the good job, not only are you straddled with these student loan debts, right? But also it is very likely that you are the go-to person for a significant amount of your family. So there are other structures and reasons around why it is difficult for us to actually maintain cash in our pockets. We could also get into our poor spending habits. We can also get into the way that we like to, the way we like to dress, the way we like to look, right? So we set a lot of trends for culture and we like to pay for it. So, but again, I want to be clear that when we're looking at what these systemic issues look like, I don't want to place the blame on what we do, right? Because that's how we get back into the space of, well, if you did better, you would have better. And that's not the case. We know that there are both racial and gender wage gaps that exist. And we have, and those studies have monitored across all things, right? So that means that Becky and Brad, who have a 4-year college degree, might make more than you and you have your doctorate. So we need to acknowledge those things because all these areas are systemic when we come back around to why we struggle to obtain dollars. We mentioned that we were underbanked. We mentioned that we had higher fees. We mentioned that we paid more for the same basic services. Many of us don't understand our retirement accounts or our IRAs. We don't understand stocks. So we don't have money put into these places. But all those things look like capital when you're coming to the bank and saying, I want to borrow your money. I don't want to pull money out of my retirement account. But I do have some just in case you want to know. So we have character, we have capacity, and then we have capital. Y'all tracking with me? So the next one is collateral, okay? Now, collateral basically means security. Collateral is a physical thing that a lender can get to if you default on your loan. All right, now, usually in a lot of cases, this is going to be the thing that you are actually borrowing money for. So like, let's say a vehicle or a building or a piece of equipment or something along those lines. And in that sense, it's a little bit easier to obtain some of those because that means that if you miss your payment, the bank can come in and they can take your vehicle or they can take your building or they can take your equipment. Now, here's the thing. Collateral matters, but understand that they quite frankly don't want your vehicle or your building or your equipment because a bank isn't in the business of having vehicles or the bank isn't in the business of owning the real estate that you wanted to invest in or owning the equipment for your industry, right? But this is really important for us to understand because this is where we look at things that are secured versus unsecured. It is much easier to get something that is secured than it is to get unsecured. Some lenders will let you use other items as collateral, and that's important for you to know. And In these cases, though, you must own it, right? Or a lien can be issued against that thing. So like, let's say if you have a house, right? So you own a home, but technically you don't fully own the home because you still have a note on it. Well, they will put a lien against it. For those of you, and I always like to make sure that I'm breaking down information and not assuming that everyone knows what this means. If a lien gets placed against something that you own or something that you are making payments on, what that means is that you cannot sell it without satisfying that lien. So from a banking perspective, why they think that that's a good thing is, let's say that you borrow money, you default on the loan, and you don't have any collateral or assets for me to come and take. Well, I can put a lien against your house. That means that in order for you to sell your house, you have to first satisfy this debt. So what it does is it basically ensures that at some point they will get access to that debt, right? And that means that you have a little bit less leverage in what you're able to do. So if you sell, you're going to have to sell and satisfy that debt, or you're going to have to satisfy that debt before you're able to sell. So you're able to use these certain types of things. And sometimes if you own it outright, like oftentimes you might use something like your vehicle, right? So you've paid off your car, you don't have a car note, then you use your vehicle in order to use as collateral to secure a loan, right? And then if you miss that payment or you miss enough of those payments, they'll come back and they'll take your vehicle. But again, they don't really want your vehicle. They want you to pay back the loan, right? So this is just to ensure that you can do that, but it's important for us to know why we struggle in these areas. So we are a largely service-based people, okay? And this is really important because, again, I want to tie these things back into a historical perspective, and I want us to understand why we face the issues that we face, okay? We are very largely a service-based people, right? Why is that? That is not by accident. That is actually deliberate. So again, I want to come back to post-slavery. Okay, so post being enslaved, after the abolishment of slavery, they actually put laws in place that did not allow us to participate in skilled trades. Now, I know that we have skilled trades, right? Because we built this country. So when you want to look at who can do the welding and who can do carpentry and who can do, all these things, right? We can. We built it. We did it. However, once we were released outside of being enslaved, what they did was they did not want us to participate in those industries. And so literally by law, they prevented us from participating in skilled trades, which by and large pushed us either back into the cotton fields or pushed us into service-based industries. These are low barrier to entry businesses, thus they are lower profits. So I am not out here to hurt nobody's feelings about their business. I am also in a service-based business, okay? But I want us to be clear, we're in service-based businesses, one, because we had to be, and two, because now they are low barrier to entry and we don't have the capital that we need in order to get into bigger industries. We don't have the capital that we need to buy equipment, to buy vehicles, to get inside of distribution, right? Look at COVID-19. People are now going to be more than ever ordering things online and having them delivered, right? All of this is a distribution system. This is logistics. We have already been cut out of logistics by and far. But if you notice that when a lot of these other industries went down, particularly service-based industries, right? What stayed in place was logistics because things still had to move. So we've been barred out of a lot of these places, right? Construction is another place. So again, we've been prevented from these skilled trades, like inside of construction, where we do not get contracts in either the private sector or inside of the public sector. Now, I want to be very clear as to when some of the largest, almost all of the largest construction companies that are developing this entire country, right? So we've been talking about gentrification for a long time. What is happening is that these construction companies have all been built post-slavery in the Reconstruction Jim Crow era. Let me give you some examples. Bechtel, one of the top construction companies in the country, was built in 1898. Fluor, 1912. Chicago Bridge and Iron, 1889. Kiewit, which is all over Denver, 1884. Turner, 1902. PCL, 1906. Whiting Turner, 1909, Halliburton, 1919. So at a time when you were legally barred from being able to enter into these skilled trades, and you were legally barred from being able to take what you had been forced to do for the previous 100+ years and actually turn this into a profit for yourself, this is when the government was infusing money to develop this country, and they were infusing it into white companies that they barred you from, that to this day are multi-billion-dollar companies that hire thousands of people, that completely dominate the construction industry. And when you go to get your construction contract, you are regulated to the shittiest of the shit jobs when it comes to construction, because we don't have the collateral to buy, or we don't have the capital to purchase what we need in order for us to become primes. We're seeing this happen everywhere. It doesn't matter what major area you're coming from the Bay Area of my hometown, Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, Denver, all over the country, where we are seeing massive development. These are the companies that are taking in those dollars, and they are not subcontracting them to you, because they are telling you that you don't have the trade, you don't have the skilled trade, you don't have the equipment, you don't have the collateral, you don't have the capacity in order to take on these contracts. So understanding collateral as being one of these key issues is widely important to understanding how we got here today. The last one that I'm going to talk about are conditions. Conditions are your business plan. This is how you intend to use the money. And I am going to say this much about us, because I deal with quite a few people who contact me who have this fabulous idea, and they have not vetted it out. They have not tested its feasibility. We have a lot of people who have a passion for something, and they're looking for something that is low barrier to entry, and they just get in where they feel like they can get in, and they get in where they feel like they can fit in, and they don't have an actual business model. They don't have a written business plan. And a lender or an investor needs to see how you're intending to use this money in order for it to make more money. This is called a return on investment. So a bank needs to know, a lender needs to know, an investor needs to know that if I give you these dollars, can you make it back? Can you make it back plus profit? You need to know that you can that your profit margin is going to include the amount of capital that you borrowed. So let's say you get a loan and you have a 3% interest, but your business has a 2% profit margin. You're losing money. Let's say you get a loan and you have a 10% interest rate. And that matters because, again, if you're missing any one of these 5 C's, you're going to struggle with getting the lowest cost loan. So you might be able to get access to capital, but it's going to be at a higher cost. Can your profit margin overcome that cost? If your loan is 10%, you need to make at least 11% to make a profit. Does that make sense? I'm hoping that that makes sense, right? So it's important to understand that you have to actually put in the work to build a business plan. It requires you to have knowledge, good knowledge, working knowledge of your expenses, your pricing, your target market, how you're going to market, right? All of those pieces. That matters. And oftentimes what we look at is we look at someone who is the exception versus the norm. And I will tell you, as a business coach, that's one of the biggest things that frustrates me. Because when we see these exceptions, first of all, we don't know everyone's story. So when it looks like someone has popped up as an overnight success, you have no idea how much time they put in the background in order for them to be a success. So let me just start with that. But oftentimes we think that people, or sometimes we see or hear these stories where people just pop up and, it is what it is, right? And they just, it looks like they had this great idea and it just worked. And they didn't have a plan, right? And you'll hear some people tell their story, like, I didn't have a plan. I don't know. I just got out there. There are almost 3 million Black-owned businesses. That's just Black-owned, right? This doesn't include what business looks like across the board. I can assure you that the most successful businesses by the norm did not just pop up without a business plan. And I get it, because as we go through some of these terms, as we start to talk about things like DTIs and ROIs and collateral and capital and all these terms that maybe aren't familiar to you, you start to just, I don't want to hear it. That's too much. Let me just do what I'm passionate about, right? But we have to understand that this is literally a matter of your ability to succeed. It's a matter of your ability to pass on wealth. It's a matter of your ability to build legacy. So I think that it's highly important that we look at what these things look at from a holistic perspective and put the work in. Put the work in. And there are organizations that can help you. So my shameless plug for the Black Business Initiative is that the Black Business Initiative can help you, and you don't have to be local to Denver. We can help you if you're in Detroit. We can help you if you're in Atlanta. We can help you if you're in Oakland. We can help you if you're in Chicago, in Arizona, in Texas. So you can reach out to us. But there are other organizations on here as well. So again, download your guide, because there are some resources that are in that guide. MetroDEEP is an organization that can help you if you are here in the Denver area as well. So it's okay if you think about building a business plan and that overwhelms you, but we can help you work through that, because it's going to be important for you, not only for you to be able to show a lender, but for you to be able to know how your business is going to make money. And it's more important for you to know before you invest all of your time, all of your passion, all of the limited resources that you already have into your business, only to discover that it's not even profitable. And that's happened. And I want to prevent you from doing that. So I'm getting ready to wrap up here. I did see a question come across that asked if BBI is a nonprofit, and we are a social enterprise. However, if you go to the actual donation button, that donation is tax deductible. That does go through a nonprofit. If you are in YouTube and you're giving on super chats, we thank you for that. We want to encourage you to support independent Black media. And we want to encourage you to support the work that we're doing. We want to thank our sponsors who have made this event free and at no cost to everyone, which is why we're here live streaming it. This is the 5th year that we've run a seminar around accessing capital. In the previous years, this has been a workshop that has cost dollars in order for us to sustain our operations. So I do want to throw out there, I'm going to, again, shamelessly plug that I do want to throw out there, that you do support the work that we're doing here with the Black Business Initiative. And you can do that through either the super chats. You can also do that through the donation link that is in the description. That is tax deductible. That does go through a nonprofit in order to get to us. And so, yes, so I did see that as I was wrapping up. I'm going to bring Simone back up on the stage, and we're going to keep this thing rolling. We are getting ready to prepare for our panel, so I'll let her go ahead and do.
Well, that was knowledge that we can all be empowered by. So I have a question for all of you out there. Number one, have you downloaded your Black Capital resource guide? If you have not downloaded that resource guide, there's more information in the description box, but this guide really has a ton of tools for you, and tools and resources for you as you're looking to build your business and as you're looking to secure capital. So that's my first question. My second question for you is, are you down with OPM? Because after hearing Jice, I'm down with OPM. So OPM is really what the rich use. They use good debt to grow their worth, and then they invest in cash flowing assets using other people's money, both within banks and investors. And so what I think we've heard from Jice with her 5 C's to credit, what we've heard with Lynn, is that we should all probably be down with OPM. So I'm gonna ask you one more time. Are you down with OPM? Because I'm down with OPM. If you're down with OPM, and I'm sure you're hearing Naughty by Nature, you're down with OPM, yeah, you know me. Drop it in the comments and say, I'm down with OPM, because that is good debt. And it's a kind of debt that you can leverage to, again, create generational wealth. So we should all, after the first part of this morning, be down with OPM. As Jice said, we have some amazing sponsors today who have made this event possible. So another sponsor that I want to tell you a little bit more about is MetroDEEP. MetroDEEP recognizes the problems, systemic injustice, and historical trauma experienced by Black people. We've included that healing and mindset work in our curriculum, although yet it's focused on all the products, services, and capital. Development on solutions will allow you to be more empowered to move your personal finance agenda and business forward towards your goal, mainly through building of infrastructure and tools which help you, our partners, and other organizations doing this and similar work to move you into higher levels of efficiency and impact, helping us do better. So huge thank you to MetroDEEP. Thank you for your commitment to the community, to entrepreneurs, and all that you are doing. So now we are going to move into our panelists. And this is incredibly exciting to hear from a whole other group of experts. So our first panelist, and I'm in no particular order that I'm going to introduce, is Clint Burnett. Clint is a small business banking relationship manager at BBVA Bank in Lone Tree. As a business banker, Clint is responsible for developing relationships with businesses in the community. By establishing these relationships, Clint is able to help those businesses with their banking needs. These needs range from working capital to purchasing or refinancing commercial real estate. Clint also provides insights and ideas for enhancing client relationships, cash flow, profitability, and efficiency. Clint has over 17 years of banking and financial service experience. Clint holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Metropolitan State University, an associate in paralegal studies from the Community College of Denver. Clint also holds a financial management certification from the School of Finance in the United States Army. Clint has served on the Emily Griffith Foundation's board of directors, and while on the board, he has served on the fundraising, executive search, and finance committees. Clint has also served on the Project Our Town's board of directors. So welcome, Clint. We are excited to hear from you. Our next panelist is Alex Wise. Alex is the executive director with dual experience with international development and finance positions that have led her to lead CEDS as it grows over the next 3 years. In line with its mission to support the American dream of financial self-sufficiency by assisting refugees, immigrants, and those from underserved communities in Metro Denver who desire to own or strengthen businesses, develop assets, and empower themselves financially. Over the course of her career, she's consulted with small businesses and cooperatives in Mongolia and South Sudan, started up a housing rehabilitation program in Afghanistan, analyzed business accelerators in Tunisia and Jordan, worked at a Mongolian investment bank, and developed and propagated for-profit business models to solve issues faced by India's poor. Directly prior to joining CEDS in 2016, she was the associate director of a Somali impact investment brokerage, where she led the placement of nearly $6 million of investment capital into 75 businesses in Somalia. She's received a Master of International Business from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, where she focused on emerging market finance. These experiences have taught her to be flexible in responding to the needs of CDES's cultural, diverse client base. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Alex. Our next panelist is Ryan Guyton. Ryan Guyton joined the Colorado Enterprise Fund as a community lending officer in 2019. Ryan works directly with our applicants through the application process, consulting on business plans, performing credit analysis and loan underwriting, and he is involved with ongoing business advisory services to borrowers. Working closely with our banking and community partners, Ryan helps to establish and maintain the relationships that bring together resources for the betterment of small business. Ryan has a background in retail banking as a business lending specialist and digital marketing advocate. He is currently attending Regis University to attain a BA in psychology and an MA in counseling. Thank you so much for joining us, Ryan. We can't wait to hear from you. And our final panelist is Michael Bevis. Michael Bevis is an entrepreneur and business professional who is driven to help others reach their full potential. His talents and experiences are unique, encompassing the areas of business marketing, leadership, personal branding, and higher education. Michael is an industrial and organizational psychologist with additional graduate degrees in finance and marketing. Michael currently manages all things related to entrepreneurship and innovation for the city and county of Denver. He is also the founder and CEO of Cool Skins, a pet product company specializing in pet performance wear. Michael has previously served as a director of entrepreneurship for a variety of colleges and universities, as well as holding additional roles as dean and chief academic officer. He has started 3 nonprofits and serves as a board member for several others. Michael spends his free time hiking and traveling and has recently summited Mount Kilimanjaro. We have so many questions, Michael. So just join me in some virtual snapping and clapping and loud, wild, ruckus applause for our panelists. So thank you. I'm going to have you all unmute as you answer questions. So panelists, what types of programs, services does your institution offer for small businesses to access capital? And how does the navigation and support to access those services work?
Do you want us to go in any particular order?
You know what? I should probably call on you since we are in Zoomtopia. So because you summited Kilimanjaro, Mike, we are going to start with you. And then after you, we'll move to Alex, then Ryan, then Clint.
Sure. Great. So just a little bit of background. So my position with the city and county of Denver in the Office of Economic Development is relatively new. So I started there in August of 2018. And in my time there, one of the programs that I oversee is a small business lending program that we offer. So we offer a program that's primarily focused on what we call gap financing. So a small or starting or scaling business, that's what we would call typically not yet quite bankable. So they typically haven't been in operation for the full 3 years and have tax returns and all the things that typical banks like to see. But they've raised some outside capital typically, or bootstrapped some stuff, or they're working with a CDFI type group, and they've come up with some of the capital, but not all of it. We can help provide some of that gap financing. The program, so first and foremost, is we have to show that there's a need, right? So there's a gap. We have a public mandate that says we won't replace publicly available funds. So what that simply means is that borrowers can't come to us because our rates are better than the local banks or the local CDFIs are offering. The intention is that we want to make sure that all of our community partners are participating in the project, and if we still can't get there, then that's typically where we come in. Our dollar amounts are tied specifically to job creation and growth of the business. So there is a job requirement and job creation component to it. And the general rule of thumb is that for every $35,000 that you borrow from us, you have to create one full-time equivalent job. So it can be spread across multiple part-time jobs or one full-time job, but that's the general benchmark, because the dollars that are coming from our pot of money are federal dollars that come down through the Community Development Block Grant funds. And so in that time, and I help work with an underwriter to assess the loans that come in, the requests that come in, and we work with our small business communities to try to get that money out into various communities. So the gap component is a requirement, the job creation component is a requirement, and then our preferences, these are not hard and fast requirements, but our preferences is that those funds go to small businesses that are primarily led by women entrepreneurs or minorities, and that they are in 7 of our kind of key strategic neighborhoods. So these are neighborhoods like Globeville, area Swansea, East Colfax, Montbello, areas where we would like to see investment dollars go back into the community, again, create those jobs in those communities and things like that. So all of that being said, our program is primarily more of what I would call a character-based lending program. So we're not as heavily focused on your credit score and your previous financials and these kinds of things. We're kind of taking the same gamble as you on betting of the future potential of the project is the way that we kind of look at it. That being said, we are still a government agency, so there's a lot of red tape sometimes to get through, and sometimes the timing of getting these loan dollars out, it can be a bit of a challenge. So recently, we're starting to work with some of the local CDFI groups for smaller dollar amount loans. So typically in our program, we do loans about $50,000 to up to about $400,000. That being said, there's a lot of people out there that we like to work with that tend to need dollar amounts, say between $1,000 and $20,000 or $25,000. But it doesn't make a lot of sense from our perspective, my personal perspective, I would say, to spend the time and the resources that we go through in a city agency to process loans of that dollar amount. Plus the timing is typically a pain point for the borrowers that we like to work with. In other words, you come to us and you apply for the loan and you'd sure like to have that money in your account 2 weeks from now or a month from now, but our process sometimes can take 60 to 90 days. And that's a little bit of a pain point. So we're starting to partner with some groups in town for those smaller dollar amounts. So it's our dollars, our kind of wishes and benchmarks, so to speak, but their speed and efficiency at processing those loans. And some of those people are on this call today. So I'm glad to be here for that.
Thank you so much. Alex, let's talk about what you're doing with the communities that you serve.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I think this is like a really cool event and very, very needed in COVID. So I run a nonprofit called CEDS, C-E-D-S. And we're a small business lender. We're what's called a CDFI, and that's really a designation from Treasury that says that we are committed to serving underserved communities. So a bank could lend to anyone. CDFIs really have kind of a narrow focus area. That said, we're really proud 60% of our borrowers are Black. So that's something that we're really proud to have a high amount of diversity in our portfolio. Our loan sizes go up to $50,000. And they can start as low as $100. About 60, almost 70% of what we do are startup businesses. And so we're really looking to help individuals that have potentially never had a business or started their business with their own funds, give them that boost. We look at the entrepreneur, as being the fire, and we're just adding a little gasoline to that to help them grow. We do offer pre-loan technical assistance. So that basically means we offer help. I think Jice, just before our session, was talking about the conditions of the loan. What does it look like? Do you have enough margin to repay the interest rate? Those are sorts of things that we can help people. Obviously, the more work you do on your business, the stronger your business will be. But maybe not everyone has the time, resources, and availability to get that. So we try to help people along the way. We have partnered with a number of local entities. We've partnered with Michael up there at the top, and we're helping with the city and county of Denver to deploy their loan fund at $50,000 and under. Just as Michael said, in those preference neighborhoods, there aren't mandatory, but there are preference neighborhoods that really have been underfunded. So how can we kind of take an eye towards ensuring that local dollars get there and help those businesses locally? We've also partnered with the city of Aurora, with their emergency loan relief program. So it's the city of Aurora's money and their funding decisions, but we help underwrite those loans. And then we're also processing our own loan applications at this time, trying to offer individuals what we can to get money that they need to keep their business open. The last couple of points I'll say is we are what Michael said, we are a character-based underwriter, and we don't have any credit score minimum. So part of those two things is what we're trying to do is we're trying to remove barriers that typically other entrepreneurs would have. And so because we're character-based, it takes a little longer. We're not quick, but we're starting to get to know you and ask you questions. And so you may not have the shiniest, well put together business plan, but can we talk to you and hear, like, what does it mean to like sell your passion, whatever that is, whatever you're making or serving or doing? And do you understand your market? And from that experience, can we work together to pull out the information we need to look at those financials to see if it is repayable? And maybe I've never met Ryan, but maybe I'll set up Ryan. We're very comparable to his organization, Colorado Enterprise Fund, but they are PPP lenders, and that is a deal that SEDS does not have right now. And if any business can get it, it's great money. And there's about $100 billion left in the fund. As of, I think, Wednesday this week, I heard that figure, 100 to 120 billion. So maybe I'll turn it over to you, Ryan.
Ryan, the stage is yours.
All right, perfect. Yes, thank you for having me here. It has been tremendous just to listen to the active engagement in the community and see how we can develop. So like Alex said, we are a CDFI as well. We are a mission-based lender. Our focus is to help the economically disadvantaged community. So that's from minorities, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses, and help them gain access to traditional funding through the bank. Pre-COVID, we were doing loans from 1,000 up to 1 million. And when we get into the larger numbers, you really have to be kind of savvy with your business. We have to understand the cash flow, the metrics of those things, but we'll help you along the way. Post-COVID, as Alex stated, we do have the capacity and ability to provide PPP funding. Over the past 4 weeks, we've done about approximately 12 million in that, approved and closed on those deals. And we've also partnered with local counties from Adams County, City of Arvada, Larimer, and Centennial to create loan pools to provide COVID relief loans. And so we are active right now. We are not at the point to go back to traditional lending, which is, kind of helping any and everyone. We are actually focusing on strategic areas, minimize the ability and the focus to help everyone that's in need right now. So we don't fall too far from what Alex was stating with SEDS. We just want to help and to provide that literacy, that financial literacy that is often missing in the minority communities, especially African Americans.
Thank you, Ryan. Clint. And we'll give it, maybe we can come back to Clint's. I know we've been popping in the private chat, just putting on our IT hats here. So you all touched on something that is really key, because often the communities that you're serving, the communities that you're benefiting, we have different starting points, right? I know oftentimes we've seen like that graphic often of like men and women in the workforce and how they just start at a different place, sometimes with more hurdles, more obstacles that they're overcoming, especially on their journey to achieving financial freedom or even achieving their business dreams. And so what I heard you say, and what I want you guys just to nod your heads with, is you all really do provide some level of infrastructure for support as you are working and counseling with helping your clients accessing capital. So thank you for that, because it's a different, we're starting at different places. Oftentimes we've not had the same starting point, or even have kind of been a fly on the wall for certain dinner conversations or just networking opportunities, because oftentimes this stuff isn't necessarily organic to us when we're looking to support and secure capital. So I'm going to ask you another question that I think will be greatly beneficial for everyone joining our event today. What types of businesses or industries do you provide service to? Are there businesses or industries that you cannot provide services to? I see some questions about the marijuana industry. This is Colorado, guys. So what types of businesses do you serve? Are there any businesses that you are unable to serve or you don't find favorable? And just kind of talk to us about why.
Yeah, so I guess I can go first again, if you don't mind. So as I mentioned earlier, our dollars are coming from federal funds. So the short answer is anything that's federally legal we can typically work with. So that eliminates, unfortunately, the marijuana industry right now. Certain businesses that are CBD based, as an example, may be able to kind of fit underneath that wire just a little bit. But we kind of, again, with our preferences in neighborhoods and business ownership, we like to keep a diverse portfolio in our own business. So, we like businesses like manufacturers, we like service-based businesses. We do some bars and restaurants and these kinds of things. But again, I want to make sure that the loans that we're approving, each quarter, each year, as an example, it's just not, brewery after brewery after brewery. And it's nothing against the breweries as an example. It's just smart business decisions for us, because as the economy fluctuates and the industry cycle, we don't want to be, all funded into one kind of sector of the business. So other than, things that are not federally legal, we'll pretty much take a look at just about anything.
Great.
Oh, just to keep the order going, similar to Michael, we're pretty similar. We can't touch the sin sector, so no gambling or marijuana or anything of that nature. I think the really cool thing with SEDS, and I think there's just a huge amount of diversity of business types.
Sorry about the technical difficulties I've been having. Was there a question you directed towards me specifically, or?
Right now we're in the session where we're talking about the industries that you service or don't service. So as soon as Alex is done, we'll pivot to you. Thank you. I'm glad. It's good to see you. Hey, Clint. We're glad to see your face. So as soon as Alex wraps up her thought, we'll pop over to you, and you'll be answering the types of industries that you service, and if there's any industries that you can't provide service to.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
The one last thing I was going to say is that it's really cool to see the diversity of sectors. We've done everything from dumpling shops to hair braiding to if someone is driving Uber or Lyft more than 35 hours a week, we'll fund that business. I mean, it's just a huge variety of businesses. I think we have 40 to 50 different sectors in our portfolio. So we definitely encourage kind of any business idea to come forward.
And Alex, you're getting all the love. People are like, I'm a client. Hi, Alex.
Good, thank you.
All right, we're going to turn it over to Ryan. Are there any types of businesses or industries that you prefer to service, or are there industries that you can't or don't service?
Yeah, like following in the footsteps, it's really just trajected to the marijuana industry. We can do hemp. We've done a few loans for hemp industry. So to answer that main question, yes, we can do that. However, if it's not going to be on the legal stance, of course, we're not going to touch it. However, we're not truly discriminatory. We're going to try our best to provide funding to any small business owner that is truly trying to develop themselves. Primarily, a lot of our pipeline comes from food industry. We have a lot of food truck based businesses, a lot of service industry as well. Trucking is a huge niche for us. It's a little stickier with trucking industry because of the amount of funding that has to go into providing their vehicles. But I've seen us take on anything. Grocery stores. We have a healthy food initiative that focuses on local community grocery stores. So we've partnered with the city and helped open the Save-A-Lot that's in Montbello. And so we're pretty open to anything out there.
And they also fund dog cooling vest companies too.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Thanks for that, Ryan.
Hey, okay.
That is very cool. All right, I'm going to turn to you, Clint. What types of businesses or industries do you serve? And are there businesses or industries that you can't or don't serve? Uh-oh, can you hear me? Can you hear us, Clint? We're going to have Clint do like a mini TED Talk when this is all said and done. So we're just going to reserve like the last 15. So we're just going to like rapid fire toss them at Clint, because I'm like, you have so much to offer. But It's Zoomtopia, y'all. It happens in Zoomtopia. So I'm going to move on to our next question for you all, which is, actually, I got distracted because I was trying to toss Clint some questions. So let's talk about, we've been in a work group frequently in regards to denying applications for funding. And I think that I would like to create some transparency within this panel about like what triggers those denials for a funding application. And so, I don't know, maybe we start with Alex. Help to provide some context and some transparency around why you deny applications. What are those triggers? How does that work? What drives your decisions?
Yeah, so what we tell clients when we come in is we try to answer two questions. Can you pay us back, and will you pay us back? And the can you pay us back really gets to what is your business model, right? Like if you're selling pizza and it costs you $10 to make, but you're only selling it for 11, that dollar profit margin isn't probably going to be sufficient to pay your rent and your salaries and all the other expenses and pay the lender back, right? So you really look of like, do the numbers make sense? So I think Ryan had talked earlier about they're providing financial literacy. That's really, really important. And it can like genuinely get complicated, especially if you're looking at a grocery store where there's thousands of products, right? So the can you get us back, and then can you pay us back, and then the will you pay us back? Because we're a nonprofit lender, we're like Jice had mentioned in the earlier session about collateral. Collateral is important, but we're a nonprofit lender. We're not going to go hard after someone if their debt goes bad. So we're really looking to see if their character is, especially because we do pull credit scores, but that is not the end all and be all of our determination. So we're really looking to see, are there certain indicators that may indicate that like, hey, if things go rough, this person's still going to stick with their loan. And that can be something like we do reference checks with past employers or vendors and say, hey, did they show up on time? Like, were they committed? Were they hardworking? Were they, did they use some good judgment? So those are things that we look for. One thing that those two questions of like, can you pay it back and will you pay it back are important. The one other thing I'll say that we found a lot with entrepreneurs is you want to invest in someone who has a vision and they're dreaming big and they're going somewhere, right? But if they're not willing to listen to anything you're saying and they're too rigid, small businesses, there's going to be a million issues are thrown at you all day long. It's going to be so-and-so quits and your rent checks bounce and this. I mean, there's so many things that are going to like try to push that business over. So we're looking for people who are strong and confident and have a vision, but also are willing to adapt to kind of the challenges that just running a small business has. And I think finding that magic middle of those entrepreneurs, that those are the ones that we look for that are really kind of gold in our eyes.
Great. Clint, are you able to hear us clearly?
I can hear you very.
Okay. Let's see. So I had logged out the question about just like what kinds of industries do you serve or don't you serve? And then this kind of transparency question of let's talk about the denial process and what happens, what creates a denied application for funding. Ooh, the devil is a liar. We're going to get this right, y'all. We're going to get some sage over the Wi-Fi. And I'm going to toss this catch, Ryan. I'm going to toss this to you. And we're going to get it right because I know we want to hear it.
No, you're okay. I think when it comes down to it, we want to make sure that the business is sustainable, whatever that looks like. And so a lot of our denials have come from the business owner not taking the time to continuously educate themselves as to how their industry is going to develop. Let's take restaurants. No one foresaw COVID coming in and, crippling everyone like it did. And so having a backup plan, an emergency plan is huge for us. We're going to help you figure out how to get these funds, but we also want to make sure that, one, like Alex, you're going to pay us back, and you have the ability to do that in a long-term goal. Since we are a micro lender, 9 times out of 10, we're going to want to lend between a year up to maybe even 10 to 25 years. And so is your business going to sustain over that time frame? And most small businesses go under in less than 3 years. And so we want to make sure that you're going to sustain over that long period of time. And if not, what is your emergency plan to get back on track?
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I'm going to just add some context. I would totally support what Ryan and Alex said, but a long time ago, in another lifetime, I was a commercial loan officer and a vice president for a big bank for 17 plus years. And I used to do sourcing and underwriting of business loans, 10,000 to about 300 million. And so the number one thing I would always say, and I still say this today when I coach and work with entrepreneurs, is a lot of, when you're putting together your loan package, whether you're providing a business plan or pitch deck or your financial projections and all these kinds of things, the first thing I really want you to concentrate on is your marketing strategy. Because any of these lenders up here, the first thing they're going to say is, so go great, you showed me these great financial projections, prove it. Right? How are you going to get customers that are actually going to pay you these dollars that you're talking about, and go do that? Because I use the restaurant concept all the time, right? My friends and my cousins say I should open a restaurant because I'm a really good cook, right? But that doesn't mean that you're going to know how to drive traffic to that restaurant to get paying customers, because your friends and your cousins are still going to want free food. So you need to make sure that you have a strong strategy in place to get paying customers to do whatever it is. I can promise you that the lenders that you're working with are probably more knowledgeable than you, especially when it comes to the finance side of that business. It doesn't matter if you're a truck driver, if you're a restaurant, if you're a brand new, you think you're a brand new concept as far as a product or a service that you're offering. I guarantee you the lenders on this call have worked with dozens of businesses in that space, and they've been analyzing and seeing numbers for years in that space. And they can help kind of coach you in that space. But it really comes down to, can you get paying customers? That goes back to Alex's original 2 questions: is can you pay us back because you have a strong marketing strategy in place, and will you pay us back from that standpoint?
Thank you. So, okay, I wouldn't be me, and this wouldn't be this event if I didn't just like audaciously and boldly ask you a question that we all wonder as entrepreneurs. We know that the role of implicit bias goes into making many of our life decisions and how we act and move through the world, from hiring to lending. And then we also know that in a place as, we'll call it homogenous. In a place as homogenous as Colorado, we can anticipate that there is very little representation when you look at the decision tree for people probably in your working for you or making decisions or reviewing loans, things like that. And so since we did lob out this spirited and transparent question about denials, what do you all do on your end to kind of check that implicit bias isn't playing a role in denying funding to people that are coming to seek funding, specific to people of color looking to gain funding for their businesses?
Do you want me to
get us? Yeah, Alex, you go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really, really important question, and I think it's definitely something that should be addressed in all venues, not just this one. I'll say for SEDS, before I get to implicit bias, just kind of going back to that last question a little bit about denials, we rarely deny people. Usually we'll have a pretty hard conversation and say, hey, listen, because we have 3 different levels of credit committees. And we'll say, for all based on how much money you're asking, and for the amount of money that you're asking, that credit committee is probably not going to approve it. And so we really try to work with people and say, hey, why don't you start at 7,000? And then 6 months later, we'll stack another loan on top and we'll get you another 10,000. We slowly start to build that relationship upward to ensure that people are there. So in terms of denials, we really try to, provided that the entrepreneurs are still kind of willing to come to us and listen to us, we're trying to work through some of those trying to like say, get as much funding as we can out the door to those businesses. And in terms of implicit bias, I think that's, again, it's a great question. We, we have individuals of color on our board and on our staff. We have gone through, different trainings to kind of check ourselves, make sure that we're staying on top of it and seeing and acknowledging kind of what's happening. And even just kind of on a day-to-day basis, we've had individuals come into our office and we'll kind of do a debrief, like, why were they apprehensive to tell us something? Why are they being a little bit maybe not as forthcoming? And some of that could be like, are individuals comfortable? Do they feel like they can tell us the honest truth? Or do they feel like one small mistake and they're going to kind of lose everything, right? The whole application's out the window. So we try to have like a continual thought process within the organization of how are we best serving people. And then at the end of the day, one thing that really is important to us is our funding. We get funded by number of minorities that we serve, and our CDFI accreditation is based on minorities. So we're actually held accountable by our funders and where they check annually to see, are we meeting certain metrics that we set out.
Perfect. And then just kind of a quick housekeeping. I'm putting on my IT hat, which is like a flimsy hat that you'd get at Burger King, but it's a hat nonetheless. So what I'm going to ask is, I'm kind of trying to solve for maybe some of the buffering issues, and I'm seeing it pop up with you guys too, is if you are not talking directly, maybe stop your video, stop your camera. And I'm thinking this again, because I'm the queen of Control-Alt-Delete as well. So I don't know that this is any kind of experiential IT anything, but maybe let's try that, and maybe that'll help with some of the buffering that's happening. So Michael, as he just like followed the directions, so can you come back up and talk? And then can you address like just the role of implicit bias and just ensuring that you all are doing that gut check, making sure that people truly are getting equitable funding opportunities through your institution?
Sure. Yeah, very much similar to what Alex said earlier in her presentations. Our committee, our loan review committee, is actually about 50-50 split between men and women on that board, and at least half of those women are women of color in the room. And as you're pretty well aware, our mayor is very focused on equitable resources in our communities. And so I feel pretty strongly about our efforts to do that. I honestly can say, and this is part of the reason why I like working with a lot of the CDFI groups, and our own group would fall into this category as well, is that we're really looking at the potential of the project and the loan itself, and less about the individual and their skin tone and these kinds of things. We really just want to bank on the idea of the success of the project. And so if you've done your homework and you've done your research and you got that strong marketing strategy that I talked about, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be qualified just as much as anybody else that would come across the table. And that's just the nature of the beast. I can say quite honestly that 25 plus years ago, when I was in the banking industry, I probably would have had a different answer for you, and I probably wouldn't have been able to speak as honestly as I am here today. But I feel confident about what we're offering today.
Thank you. Ryan, I'm going to have you answer this question for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we've all heard of diversity and inclusion. And I think the biggest transition for me so I was at Wells Fargo for 4.5 years. You do not see that within the lending portfolio. It is usually segregated to businesses that have been in business for 2 or more years, and they're usually not going to be African American because, quite frankly, we do not believe in the banking system. We never have. And so when you have the transition of, hey, you need to get a bank account and kind of set yourself up for that success, it doesn't happen. Transitioning over to the CDFI nonprofit sector, we have truly focused on, and we have to focus on, the mission of not being discriminatory against any color, race, creed, religion, whatever you want, whatever your business includes in the business owners itself. We cannot, as an organization, hinder you from lending. That is our purpose, is to go out of the traditional funding way of the bank and coming over and saying, hey, there is actually somebody, a company that sees past, the barriers of the world that are placed against me, my skin tone, and they're actually willing to help out. So luckily enough, I am thankful that we have provided primarily a lot of our funds for women-owned businesses, Black enterprise companies. It's time for change, and we have to be able to do that as an organization.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Clint, and we'll see if this works. I see some buffering. Let's see, though. Okay, well, we're going to move on to the next question. And I just want to thank you all, too, for answering that question with such transparency and honesty. As we talk about forging relationships with lenders, I think that transparency really helps for both parties to build some confidence and to really forge an authentic relationship where you just know that, you're invested in my success and, we want to work together and work collaboratively. So thank you so much for answering that question. It's kind of a good segue. So what is a CDFI and how do they differ from a bank? And let's go with, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. So CDFI is a community developmental financial institution. It is governed by the United States Treasury and is pretty much deemed to have a mission for economically disadvantaged, communities. So we differ from the bank, speaking from Colorado Enterprise Fund, we differ because we are more flexible in terms of credit. Like Alex and Michael said, we're not going to base everything off of that credit score. It is not an all-in goal. If you've had issues in your past, whether that's a bankruptcy, medical debts, as long as it is explainable, we're going to help you out. And so we differ in those aspects. We also differ in the ability to actually fund a startup business. We're not pressed for you to have 2 years in history. We're going to help you with projections and try to help you navigate what it's like in your industry to advance. And so we are more flexible. We're not in a box, and most banks are going to place you in a box. You either are approved or you're not approved, whereas on our side, you're going to be treated equally and fair and say, hey, maybe not right now, but let's get you prepared for it in the future, if that's the case.
Alex?
I think Ryan kind of hit it on the head pretty well. I think just because we're nonprofits, we're much more flexible in trying to kind of what he was saying, that gray area where at a bank you're either approved or denied, but really that middle area of just trying to help people. The other thing is we're not, because we're not banks, we're not regulated like banks. And there's certain banks that say, hey, listen, if you're late at 120 days, you have to charge it off. You have to say that this loan's no longer viable, and that really can hurt someone's credit scores. Where on the post-loan side, if someone's late, we try to do a lot of workouts. We try to do a lot of, I know Colorado Enterprise Fund has some really good post-loan TA services, but we try to get you business mentors. Maybe something happened that month, so we try to really have carry that relationship we built in the pre-loan phase through the post-loan phase, and we do a lot of modifications to get people. If you're 90 days late, 3 months late, and you're working with us, you're communicating, you're trying, we'll modify that loan so all of a sudden you're back to current. And you got the resources you need to keep performing on that loan, because the last thing we want to do is like charge off a loan, pull the loan from underneath someone, and all of a sudden their business is now shaky because they have bad credit, right? Like that is a situation where you've ended up in a worse situation than in a better situation. And I think a lot of CDFIs would say our ultimate goal is to help people get into a better situation, whether that's with their business, their credit, their cash on hand, whatever that is.
Great. So Clint, when would a business access a bank versus like a CDFI?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yay.
It was this.
Well,
I saged the Wi-Fi.
Okay. Well, that's a good question to ask. So we sometimes work in conjunction. And I know Ryan and Alex, I haven't had the pleasure of Colorado Enterprise, Session, places like that for that we refer our clients to. It really all depends on several different factors, which route you go to, which route you go. When most of my clients or most folks that I'm speaking to are trying to depending upon the dollar amount and their business and their proof of concept, like what Michael talked about earlier, with the marketing piece, which we just really want a very positive business plan, and depending upon that. So if for example, if there is someone wanting to open up a coffee shop, for example, and they do not need much capital to get going, what we would do is we would then refer them to someone like Ryan for their funding. It appears that their financing may be a little bit more flexible as far as the criteria for moving forward. And like Ryan had mentioned, we generally want that 2-year history in order to help facilitate any type of with startup business misconception that the big banks, if you will, have in the community. We do work with startup businesses, but again, it has to be that very solid foundation, very solid planning, and it has to make sense for the bank. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I've been waiting to talk this whole time. But it really just depends.
Okay. So
Simone, can I jump in 1 second?
Yeah.
One thing that someone that like a BBVA, a traditional bank, they're going to offer rates that are on average lower than CDFIs. And so a lot of what our job is to get people to a point, like Clint, just had said, hey, listen, typically we need 2 years of historical financials. CDFIs, us and Ryan's group are great places to come, get that startup loan, build up a year or two of history, and then go to a bank because you're just going to get a cheaper cost of capital there.
Thank you. That's a really awesome way of helping us to kind of converge the difference in who can access them. So really quickly, each of you just tell people where to find you, whether it's your website, and we'll type it in for everyone. We're going to then open it up to some Q&A as they come. I really want to thank you all for answering the questions, some of the hard questions, and thank you so much. So quickly, Clint, how can we connect with you and the services you provide?
Well, directly at Clint, or reach out to me on my cell phone, 720-788-6771, and I would be more than happy to explain any and all resources that we have to provide.
Great, thank you so much, Alex. How do we connect with you?
The best place is our website, which is sedsfinance.org. So that's CEDS finance.org.
And we'll pop that into the chat for all of you. Ryan, how can we connect with you?
Yeah, it is easiest way, coloradoenterprisefund.org. Or you can reach me at my business email, which is the best way, Ryan@coloradoenterprisefund.org as well.
Thank you so much. And Michael?
Yep. So our website is denvergov.org. And also, like Clint, you can reach me on my personal cell phone number at 619-454-3593.
Thank you so much. We're going to have you all stay on. I am going to invite Jice and Lynn also to come on so that we can just kind of reiterate the resources, get any questions from the audience. You all are amazing. I know you all will have some people contacting you. Thank you. Thank you for all of the work that you're doing to ensure the financial success of the clients and the communities that you serve. I'm just going to plant this seed, Jice. Plant, so. But I think we probably need to come back and do just like a whole, I mean, we could have spoken about this for like an hour and a half, just how to access you all and just understanding the nuances of accessing capital with your organizations and building those relationships. So I don't know. I think part 2 might be coming in a month or so.
Absolutely. We're certainly going to need to come back on and talk a lot more about this, especially the relationship building portion, which is really key. I talked a lot about what has happened historically, and those things are, incredibly active. And what helps is when you have, those personal relationships and people who really get it, right? And it doesn't change the systemic nature of the banking industry currently, but it does help for the individual currently to be able to build those relationships, get their foot in the door as we continue to bust down and work on those policies, and knowing that people, as some of these that are here right now today, who are advocates and allies in that fight to, work on making sure that we have access to capital. So feel free to start dropping questions. We've had a couple already, but I'm going to run through just briefly some of the resources that are available. Again, I want to just point you over to making sure that you're looking inside of that resource guide. You can download that resource guide. It is in the description. And I want to just start highlighting some of these resources, because when we think about building that capacity and we think about what it looks like in order for us to access these resources, essentially what many of our lenders are saying is that we have to be prepared, and there's a lot of help to do it. The one of the primary things that I see is that we don't access that help. So I'm gonna just pop up some of these resources. Everyone here on the panel, if you'll just sit tight for 1 second, and you'll see these things pop up on the screen. But again, I want to make sure I talk about the Black Business Initiative. We are here building this generation of Black entrepreneurs. We do help organizations start, grow, and scale our businesses. You can, we are actually in the process of doing a complete overhaul on our website, but you can get in contact with us at BBI Professional. And if you would like to get in contact with us or me directly, you can inbox me or inbox the Black Business Initiative, and we will send you some information on how to access us while our website is undergoing construction. I also want to pop up MetroDEEP. So MetroDEEP has a few programs and resources. One is their MetroDEEP pipeline. So again, this is a service that you can get started on. And if you go to MetroDEEP.com, you can sign up for that pipeline, and they will help you figure out which path that you need to go on in order to point you in the right direction towards the proper resources and work with you along the way. They also have their Becoming One curriculum, which is a self-guided curriculum for smaller tribes, for small organizations or small communities that want to work with building those relationships. And then Diverge Central is getting ready to launch, and Benzel Jimerson will be on a little bit later just to talk more through MetroDEEP and what they have. But Diverge Central, which is a social media platform that is getting ready to launch, it's actually more than a social media platform, and he'll explain that it's bigger than a social media platform, but that's getting ready to launch next month. So you want to make sure that you get in touch with MetroDEEP. Also, there were some questions around the PPP loan. The National Business League has been around for 120 years. It was founded in 1900 and is currently being run by Dr. Ken Harris, a phenomenal man, and is based out of Detroit and is all over the country currently. But the National Business League has partnered with MBE Capital, and currently they are processing $60 billion in PPP loans that they are pushing directly towards our community. So you do not have to be in Detroit to access that. But if you want to find out more about qualifying for the PPP loan, which is, most likely going to turn into a grant if you were using it for the proper reasons. You can get in touch with them at mbecp.com. So you want to go there, and you can also sign up to learn more about the National Business League at nationalbusinessleague.org. I want to also point out that we have the Minority Business Office, which is here in Denver, or in Colorado rather, and they have no cost consulting. They help you to get your certifications. They can help you with procurements and exports. And so you want to make sure if you are looking for some of these resources that you head over to MBO Colorado for the Minority Business Office. Again, just wanting to point out as I continue to move on and talk about, as I continue to push through these resources, I want to remind you how many people do not contact these resources. They are available. They will talk to you. Many of them are staffing people of color, and I'm saying people of color specifically because they are staffing both Black and brown people, but they're staffing people of color in order to help break down some of those barriers. And if you are still struggling, you can reach out to organizations like BBI and like MetroDEEP, and we will walk you through, right? We will meet with you and meet with them so that we can help bridge those gaps and bridge those connections. We understand that the trust barriers are huge factors, and I don't want to ever disregard that. What I do want you to know is that we can help you overcome some of those barriers so that we can have access to the resources. So you don't have to walk into a relationship trusting, but you do have to walk into a relationship knowing that if they have some of the resources that you need, you have to be prepared to access them. And so we are here to help you bridge that gap if you are not comfortable with contacting these organizations yourself. And that goes to any organization. I mentioned already that the Black Business Initiative is not only here for Denver. So if you are in another state and you are looking to access resources in your state and you are struggling to access those resources in your state, we will reach out and help you. So, lean in so we can work together. Okay. So I also want to talk about some business and personal finance resources. Those are very important. So I want to start with business and financial management services. So this is bookkeeping, payroll, taxes, business valuations, and so on and so forth. So all of these businesses provide free consultations. So again, you want to reach out, and you can reach them at bizfinancialmanagement.com. I also want to take a look at TK O'Neill, which is a consulting group. And this is an advisory center that, again, also helps with credit. So I mentioned the importance of getting your credit in order. Yes, in order for you to access the lowest cost capital, but also this is important so that you can look at other areas where your credit affects you, in utilities, in health insurance, in car insurance, and other places like that. So you can reach out and get the help that you need. This group, she can also help you with taxes, wills, life and health insurance. I also want to talk about D'Angelo Starnes here, who is a local attorney, also does small business taxes, intellectual property, estate planning. So these things are really important. Again, as we just discuss and talk about what it looks like for us to build intergenerational wealth, we need to think about what that looks like to do our estate planning. We also have Edward Jones. Specifically, Melanie Williams is amazing when it comes to helping you look at your personal finances, which do have a direct impact on your business, health and business finances, especially if you are a sole proprietor or a single member LLC. So you want to reach out to her. Again, thinking about estate and legacy strategies, wealth strategies, and thinking about how you're going to, build and amass and retain that wealth. Operation Hope is a national organization, and so you can go to Operation Hope. We have local offices here in Denver as well as across the country. I want to say they have like 160 offices. Don't quote me if that's the exact number, but it is quite a few offices all across the country, and they have no-cost services to help you work on your credit and your financial health. So again, you want to access these resources, guys. So don't just hear it and then go away, right? One of the biggest things is filling the knowing doing gap. How do you go from what you know, what you have access to, and to actually moving into doing and utilizing these resources? So as we get ready to jump into answering your questions, I want to make sure that you know that there are resources available to help you do this. So the last resources that I'm going to throw at you are resources around lending. So some of these are already here. I'll start with one that's not. That is First Bank. First Bank is a local bank here. They bank in Colorado, Arizona. They're somewhere else out here. I'm so sorry that just totally left me what states they bank in, but they bank in multiple states here in the Rocky Mountain region. But First Bank is known for their slogan as banking for good. So again, business and personal banking services as well as loans. And they do help, they are another partner who will throw you towards some additional resources if they have to deny you. They say, not now. It's more, let's go and get you the resources that you need, and let's bring you back so you can get that lower cost financing. Of course, Alex is here with SEDS. And so, she talked at length about what SEDS offers, but you can connect to those resources at sedsfinance.org. And then, of course, we also have Ryan here with Colorado Enterprise Fund. So Colorado Enterprise Fund, again, with, the advisory services and business lending. So before I turn it back over to the Q&A, I actually want to make an announcement. I hope you all are listening, because one thing that we talked about, or that I talked about, is having options. And so while you want to make sure that you are connecting with these traditional banking sources, these nonprofit banking sources and lending opportunities, I want to also just briefly talk about and make this announcement about what we are doing here at the Black Business Initiative so that we can begin to create wealth for our community. So launching in September, we will have the Black Capital Investment Fund. These are capital solutions for us, by us. And this is launching in September, okay? So we are making the announcement today. Again, if you check the description, in the description box, there is a link if you want more information on the information sessions that will be held in June, July, and August. So all throughout the summer, we will be holding information sessions around what it looks like to build this investment fund inside of our community, for our community, by our community. And that information is going to be going out in 3 information sessions, June, July, and August. The fund will launch in September, okay? So you can visit BBI Professional, but also go ahead and look inside of your descriptions. And if you are looking for the Black Capital Investment Fund, there is a form. You can sign up on that form, and then we will let you know when our information sessions are going to be held, so you can join those information sessions and find out. We are definitely here to create capital inside of our community that we operate and control as well. So with that being said, I'm going to open this back up. We are going to go ahead here and start taking some questions. All right, Simone, I'm going to drop back out, but I'm going to go ahead and start taking some questions and popping them up on the screen, and we'll go from there. How's that sound?
Yeah, that is perfect. Yes, I will eagerly await that. Just quickly, too, as we're kind of waiting for the questions to roll in, I have to just take a moment of privilege, because I'm the host and I can say the things and do the things. I just want to give a huge moment of gratitude for both Jice and Lynn for creating this event. If you look in the comments, someone said, my daughter's watching and she's learned so much. And this is what it's about, is creating this and creating a space for us to have these conversations for our legacy. Someone else said, this has been awesome. Someone else said part two. It would be like super loud and the whole room would be doing that if we were together. And someone else said, please do a part 2. So Jice, thank you so much for bringing these great minds together to do this. Lynn, thank you so much. And then to our panelists, to Clint and Alex and Ryan and Michael, thank you for spending this time with us on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. You could have been jogging, you could have been hiking, you couldn't have been together in a building, but there's so many other things you could have been doing today. And so thank you too for just sharing all the intellectual capital that you possess. And thank you for sharing all of the resources and the ways that your organizations are impacting business. So a huge thank you for that. Everybody just is in a space of gratitude right now. They're like, thank you, Jice. We love you, Jice. I imagine that they're like, there's roses. Jice, there's roses being thrown at you. Again, please take a peek at the resource guide, download it, utilize it.
You guys know that I love you. I love you guys so much. I'm really excited. I don't see a lot of questions, and I want to really encourage you to ask questions. Actually, we do have a few more curated questions that we have. Yes, but here's the thing, guys. And this is where it goes from, that was amazing information to how do I take next steps and what do I need to do to get started, right? And what you have in front of you, and I really hate that that we can't hear from Clint because he is the actual, one of the banks that are represented here. We have 2 CDFIs and we have the government sitting right here. We have to be able to ask the questions. And when we have none, that concerns me that we're not thinking deeply enough about our own situations in order for us to figure out what we need to do to make our next step, right? So, the resources are there, but let's get in here and find some questions. Simone, I did just hit you.
Okay, I see one from Jamar Holmes Moore, and he says, I'm working with a team of young adults to build that big enterprise, but we're cautious about debt. So what are the next steps in this scenario?
Do you care who answers that?
Oh, no. Oh, you guys are ready for direction. Oh, no.
Yes,
Be brilliant away. Do you want to go, Alex?
Yeah, I'll be quick because I'm sure other people have some comments on this. Definitely to Jamar, like, that's fantastic. That's great that you've got things started. Sometimes that's the hardest part, is like taking those first couple of steps to actually get things going. I would really look at your cash flow, right? Like, what do you need the money for is going to be the big question the lenders will ask, but like, more importantly, that's a question that you should ask, right? Like, and if you're going to put this money into your company, how will that what's your return on investment, right? Like, are you going to buy something that's going to generate X, 2X, 3X growth in revenue? What does that look like? And taking on debt is real. Like, it has real consequences. And so I think be cautious and really understand kind of what you need the money for and how is that going to help your business would be kind of some initial questions that, like, if you were to come to someone like SEDS, we'd probably like have that conversation with you. But I don't know what the other panelists might have to say.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
You're good.
I was just going to chime in and compliment both Ryan and Alex's groups, because it's one of the things that I refer to them on a pretty regular basis in my day job with the city. And it's primarily because of what I call the wraparound services that they offer there. So there's coaching and kind of instruction that happens right on the front end, as well as all the way through the process of being a loan borrower with them. I think it's fantastic. In my role with the city and county of Denver, we have kind of free co-working space called the Commons on Champa. If you're not familiar with it, people, pre-COVID, you could come in and use free Wi-Fi and free coffee and all this kind of stuff. But we offer advisory hours in that space for free. And we can help kind of have these conversations and coach you through the difference between, debt financing and alternate forms of financing, and how that may or may not impact your business, and how to grow and scale using debt in an effective way. I think it's really important. A lot of people think debt is, always a bad thing, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Some of the largest corporations in the world use debt financing to continue to grow and scale their businesses even bigger than they are. So it's just a matter of using it as effectively as possible. And so I would just encourage people to do that. And I'm just going to, before we kind of throw it back to Ryan, I saw that Chubby Curls put a comment in there about needing IP attorney support. These are the types of things you can get from us at the Commons on Champa as well, as far as those references and those resources. And I believe her and I have chatted once before. So,
Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. So echoing everything Alex and Michael said, obviously our mission is to provide capital to those underserved communities, but our true value comes from helping, those businesses with coaching. And so we offer one-on-one consulting through CEF. It's called Business Accelerated Services. Through financial literacy, we want to help you with cash flow, accounting, bookkeeping, your business management, marketing, legal assistance. And so we offer that at little to no cost. And the cost part comes in when it may be something more illegal. You need to talk to an attorney, so we may charge a little bit of fees there. But the step is to acknowledge, obviously, that you have a dream and you have this passion. But now, what does it take to get there? And partnering with us will help you out. And I know Latasha Bell, there was a question. Even though you may have issues with your credit history and stuff like that, we will definitely help you out. It's as small as a one-on-one meeting, and that can go on to actually helping you develop into a lifetime partner with us.
Awesome. Another question that has come in. Now they're flowing. Ask and it shall be given. What organizations and banks are providing the administrative help with paperwork and access to capital, and what are the processes?
I vote for Alex to go first again.
So this is just for any or any type of loan product. This isn't for the PPP and the special kind of COVID.
Yeah.
So for any loan product, I would say there's almost 5 local CDFIs, and then there's tons of resources. So with CDFIs, you have Colorado Enterprise Fund, you have us SEDS, there's DreamSpring, there's RMMFI, Rocky Mountain Microfinance, and there's Colorado Lending Source. A lot of us will help you in that, kind of what like Ryan said earlier, just like come in and have a conversation with us. And most of the times we're going to help you figure out, explain the application process. Here's what you need to come give us. If maybe you don't have 3 months of business bank statements, we'll kind of help think through, okay, well, if we don't get that, what else could we use for that application? And then you have like the comments on Champa. It sounds like MetroDEEP, BBI. Sounds like there's others that can just help you through that process. And honestly, if and when you go through that process, you're going to be a much stronger business coming out of it. Making sure that you have all your documents in order and that you've, got your house in order in terms of payroll, taxes, and X, Y, and Z. All of that stuff is definitely going to, it's going to be a really beneficial process for you.
Great. Is there any one of you represented on the panel that can help with real estate and self-storage, multifamily units in low development areas?
Yeah, we can. I mean, it's something we can take a look at. The real estate, depending on the purpose and the intention of the real estate, is something we can certainly take a look at. Self-storage, as an example, is something we certainly could take a look at. Again, just remember that our loan funds need to tie back directly to job creation. So, if you're looking, like, we wouldn't be the lender that you would come to if you're looking to buy and flip homes. Or to buy residential properties that you want to rent out. That's not really what we would do, but self-storage requires employees, it requires maintenance, it requires things like this. So it certainly could be something we could do, but also from the city's perspective, I think kind of your first stop would likely be with us, because we can help you understand any tax credits or financial incentives that apply in particular neighborhoods that you're looking at. Oftentimes, just to kind of help everybody understand the flow and the processes, businesses will come through our space at the Commons on Champa or through the advisory hours that we offer, work with our team. And if financing is something that they need, we typically refer them directly back to a local bank or a CDFI group. Because oftentimes, as I mentioned, the loans that we do are primarily gap related. So we don't do 100% of any project. And so we're more interested to say, as Ryan and Alex, as an example, or Clint, are they interested in working with you as well? And if they are, then great. If they are, but only up to a certain limit, then typically they'll kind of refer back to us in that process. But we're probably a good first step, only because we can help you understand the neighborhoods and any incentive programs that are available there, and then we talk about a variety of different finance options for you there.
Perfect. Kind of along those lines, another question came in. Says, I've heard that these types of loans usually are not offered for real estate businesses. Do any of you So I think you kind of answered that. But if so, can it be for an investment property, or does it have to be for operations, marketing, etc.? So it sounds like no loans necessarily for real estate.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to go to more of a traditional, residential lender for residential real estate. That's typically how it works. There's typically cutoffs, and I wish Clint was on the phone because I'm sure he's more active in this space than I have been in the last decade. But when you get to multifamily units above a certain number of units within a same kind of physical footprint, real estate, they can kind of shift to some type of commercial loans sometimes. But and Ryan and Alex, of course, can chime in, but I don't think any of us, the three of us that are able to converse here, are doing residential loans for that kind of purpose.
Okay.
You're spot on. I think it is. We will help you with commercial real estate. So if you're looking to purchase that and to invest in that for the business's operations, yes, we can do that for you. But in terms of the flip and flips or trying to do Airbnb type of deal for the business, we do not offer that option.
Same thing for us. Well, we max out at 50,000. So 50,000 really won't buy you much in Metro Denver, but even then our funds are restricted from our grantors that we can't do real estate, unfortunately.
Thank you all.
So for By the Block, you can definitely do real estate on there, whether it be a multifamily or an investment property. We can definitely do real estate, and the advantage that you have with By the Block is that the community is investing in with you. So it's not just, you're not being, you're not borrowing from a lender, you're borrowing from the community directly. So we can do from single family housing to multifamily. As of right now, we've done up to 20 unit property available single family homes that's actually fully funded on By the Block. So we can do real estate definitely on By the Block. That's one of the reasons why By the Block was created, so we can purchase real estate together. So yes, that is an option.
Awesome. Thank you. And great question. Another question that's come through is, I am highly creative, I am passionate, and can sell my products with ease. I have not kept the best financial records. Could you assist someone like me?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, we sure can. Sometimes, like I've told a lot of my borrowers, our first conversation, I'm going to envision the best opportunity and chance for you. Later down the line, after the application comes in and we see kind of the bits and pieces, it may fall apart and we may have to revise that plan. But yes, we're going to help you no matter what, and we'll try to get you the right answer. If I don't have it, I'm going to get you to someone that does.
Awesome. I think everybody, when it talks about money and can you help me, they want to hear yes. So thank you for the yes answer. And it's, again, events like this are so important. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Jice, for putting this together. Just so that people can kind of get over that hump. Like, I'm not even going to ask because I know they're going to tell me no. So thank you so much. Another question. I'm working on growing my installation team for my company, where we will need tools and equipment. I would like to know if there are stipulations on the age of equipment that is purchased with borrowed funds.
I'll chime in here just again from wearing my banker hats from the old days. So again, I wish Clint was on here because he could probably give you a more updated version. But when financing things like equipment, there's typically depreciation value that goes into that equipment. There's kind of standard accounting practices that are used to determine what that depreciation is, depending on the size and scale of that equipment. They use a methodology called a maker depreciation, which is kind of a pre-calculated based, again, on that type of equipment, or they use what they call a straight line depreciation. Banks will typically look at that, at those calculations to make a valuation on that. So I'm making up the numbers here, but if you're going to purchase a piece of equipment that brand new 5 years ago cost $50,000 to do that, and you're buying it today and it's 5 years old because somebody else is getting rid of it, the bank is typically not going to give you a ton of value for that. They might consider giving you loan dollars to help with that, but it's not going to be, whatever. If you purchase the equipment for $10,000, the bank might not necessarily look at the full value of that. So a similar way to look at that from a banking industry standpoint, people always think, as an example, if you sell a physical product, that having a ton of inventory ready to ship out is a good thing. Most banks typically look at that as a negative thing because, if something happens and there's a turn in the economy and now you can't push that product out the door, it doesn't hold value. So general rule of thumb back in my day in the banking industry, when we look at inventory, we probably give you close to about 10 cents on the dollar of credit value for that inventory. So if you have $100,000 worth of inventory sitting in your garage, I'm going to value it at only about $10,000, because in the event that your business goes bankrupt, and I have to come collect all assets available to me to try to pay back as much on my loan, that's probably what I estimate I can sell your product for at auction or somewhere in the open space. So if you're purchasing new equipment, typically banks will look at that. And again, they kind of use that maker depreciation model, but I'll let Alex and Ryan chime in because I'm not 100% certain how the CDFIs view that type of stuff.
Do you want to go, Ryan?
Yeah, so when it comes to equipment finance, I think the general margin is, okay, what kind of equipment are you buying? So we've financed a lot of brewing companies, and our thing with collateral is that, like Jai said earlier, if that's not our industry, we're not going to want to resell your equipment. So what we're going to do is discount it at usually a 50% margin. So if you paid $20,000 for it brand new or when you bought it, it's going to likely drop to $10,000 and not give you that equity that you originally had. However, we will go back. I would say general standard is about 7 years, and that's for vehicles and everything else. And so obviously the newer the better, but that is more pricey. And so if it makes sense to you and if it's not going to cause you more harm than it is gain, I would say you're comfortable with purchasing that equipment.
And I'll answer it slightly different. I think both gentlemen were talking about like the value of collateral, how we look at which is something that we also do. But I would also say it helps drive the loan term. Like how long are you going to have to repay that loan? So let's say you're buying a long haul tractor, like a semi. We're going to say, what's the useful life of that truck if it's used? Same thing for the gentleman who asked the question about tools and inventory, like how long can those tools be used? Because we don't want to put you into a 5-year loan, but your truck or your tools are going to die at 3 years just because they've had that age and wear and tear on them. Because all of a sudden we're then putting you in a situation where you've got 2 years where you can't make a revenue, but you're obligated to pay us back. And that's not fair. So we do look at, and separate to collateral, but for determining what the term is, we'll look at what the useful life of that equipment or that asset is to help determine what the term should be. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I was, because my dog was barking. So a couple requests, and then we'll take one more. Just kind of, I've gotten some wish list requests. People are asking for real estate and investment classes to know what is actually a good investment or what is a good real estate opportunity. So just kind of put that on your tickler list. There's some demand for that. I've gotten some wish list items for generating classes for teens and young adults that teaches financial literacy, investing, credit building, rebuilding, home buying, and paying down loans. So they're wanting on the wish list to teach students how to survive before they hit the real world, and so that they don't lose that generational wealth. So as we're looking to build more content and more experiences, those are on the wish lists. I saw a Lynn-based question just pop up. We will take that. Would my credit score affect my ability to participate in Buy the Block?
No, credit is not a factor in participating in bringing a project to Buy the Block. You're actually it's no different than actually pitching to an investor. So you'd have to create your pitch deck, you create an offering memorandum, but credit is not a factor. But we do assist you with creating all of these particular documents and making sure that your business product and your business idea is sound in order for you to offer it to the community. But credit is not a factor. You are pitching to investors. So sort of like going to an angels list, you're pitching to investors, and those investors will look at, the quality of the business, the quality of the property, to make sure that that this is a sound investment for them, and that they can possibly at some point get a return on their investment. So so credit is not a factor, but keep in mind you are pitching to investors.
Well, thank you. I am going to kick this back to Jice and Lynn. Thank you all. All of you all out there in Cyberland, thank you for spending the morning and the afternoon with us. Thank you for all of your great questions. Sorry if we were unable to get to some of your other questions, but I think that we are going to manifest a part 2 of this. So please stay tuned for those marketing materials. But I know this is going to be coming soon in another format. So thank you so much.
Hey, all right. So thank you, Simone. I'm actually getting ready to bring up Benzel Jimerson for one moment. He's going to talk a little bit about MetroDEEP. I've talked quite a bit about BBI. Lynn, before I bring up Benzel, is there something you want to throw out about By the Block, how people can get in touch with you, how they can, start that process or think about inquiry, whether they're looking on the investment side or on the project side? I'm going to bring Benzel in while we're talking.
Okay, so definitely people can reach out by visiting bytheblock.com. It is the way it sounds, By the Block. Visit the website, reach out to us on the contact us page, and ask us any questions about being an investor or submitting a project to get investors. And we work with businesses as well as real estate. I'm not sure if I clarified that, but we do work with both. But either way, the structure of any of the business or any project has to be in the form of a business. So you have to come with business registration, EIN, some financials. You have to have some sort of background to be able to make sure that we have a fundable project.
Absolutely. And I do want to make sure that I thank our panelists who took a time out of their Saturday to come on and answer questions. I want to make sure, again, one more time, to just throw out a thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Trailhead. Thank you to MetroDEEP. Thank you to By the Block. I'm going to bring up Benzel. Benzel, I'm going to, there you go. You unmuted yourself. Tell us about MetroDEEP.
Absolutely. So I just want to start by saying thank you to Jice, thank you to Lynn for what you're building, but certainly Jice in putting this together. The work that we do would not be possible in this community, specifically without you, and just the phenomenal resource that you are in so many ways. So thank you. Beyond that, MetroDEEP, we're operating a lot in the background, and Simone kind of shared a little blurb about us earlier, where we say we really do recognize the systemic injustices, and we also, with that, we've inserted that into all of our curriculum, all of our products and services, and we're really here to build towards the solutions. And so, just really quickly, one of the main purposes of MetroDEEP is to build a strategic plan that we can actually take to, and this is much to Jice's point, that we have to impact policy, right? We have to impact the actual way that things are happening. And what we don't think is that it should be something where we go and we say, hey, government, we need you to help us. We need you to do the right thing, because we know that they have not for the course of American history, right? And so with that being said, we have been in some conversations for the past couple of years now and gathered a lot of information. We continue to gather that information. So it's really community built, but building a strategic plan that then we're able to take to the government and demand policy, because we've done a couple of other things. One, which is we have done all of the things that we can do, and many of the things that you've heard on here, but we've done everything that we need to do as a people. We've gotten from a personal perspective, from a business perspective, from a community perspective, from a family perspective. So we're providing tools, products, and services to be able to do those things. And then inserting those into that strategic plan, and then also having conversations with all of the or any kind of Black economic development stuff that is that's happening in the Denver metro area. And that way we're able to take that and say, here's what's already happening, here's what we are proposing, here's what we need you to do, and here's the funding that we'll need for it. So it takes that they're developing those solutions out, and it takes away that excuse of our accountability, because we are accountable through it, and then putting it all onto them. And so I think it's really being able to take that fight to a head. Beyond that, just really quickly, we do have also some other infrastructure building pieces, Diverge Central, which is going to launch here in early June. And we're going to let in a free 100 Black businesses, and really that particular tool is going to, it's a social media platform to end racial and economic inequality through technology. And Diverge Central users are diverging away from traditional platforms that do not give back to our community, but make money off of our data and usage, and becomes the central digital incubation and formal information space for economic development in the Black community, powered by social connections. And so with that, we have 15% of those profits that are going to go back into a community building fund that you all will be able to access. We would love to partner with some of the people that we've heard on here to do some of that stuff, linking businesses, but it's essentially like a Facebook 3.0 that is specifically dedicated to us. We do have that pipeline. What's different, I think companies and organizations like JICES and BBI really help to get people ready and put on events like this that truly inform, and all of the other partners and resources that were on here. And so we operate a little bit more like by the block, where we have access. My personal mentors are, in a very powerful position here in Colorado, and so are able to access capital from an angel perspective, from a venture capital perspective, up to some of the dollar amounts that Michael was talking about earlier from his older days. And so there's just some really exciting opportunities. And then the last thing is really that curriculum where our tribes can one, address that historical trauma, two, our relationship and our mindset to money, and then three, start with that real application of economic understanding and knowledge that help you to make better decisions and continue to build to the places that have been talked about. So truly appreciate, JICE, you bringing us on and giving us a moment. And all you have to do is go to MetroDEEP.com and we go from there.
All right, thank you, everyone. I want to just acknowledge, as we bring this program to a close, just a minute or two over. I want to thank everyone again just for taking your time on this Saturday to come out and again, learn more about our history, learn about our present, and think about how we continue to move forward and prosper in our future. I want to strongly encourage you to take action on the things that you've heard here today, whether that is assessing where you stand in those 5 C's, acknowledging what type of credit it is that you might want to or need to access inside of your organization in order for you to take it to the next level. A very wise woman named Danielle Schutz acknowledged in one of our mastermind classes recently that you can sustain a business with your revenues, but you cannot grow it without infusion of capital. And so the way that you infuse that capital is totally up to you. But again, we want to think about options and we want to think about leverage. And so if you have questions, I want to encourage you to reach out. There were other questions that were asked. We had other questions that were emailed to us directly, as well as those that were put in the chat. We will be going through and look for a follow-up email where we will be addressing as many of those questions as possible. Again, I just want to thank all of our sponsors, Trailhead, MetroDEEP, and By the Block. I want to, thank our beautiful host, Simone D. Ross. I want to thank all of our panelists. And of course, I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that has taken the time today to come in and talk about this very important topic. We are deserving of access to the capital that we need in order for us to grow our legacies. And I'm here with you in this fight. And I encourage you to reach out to me and reach out to my team at the Black Business Initiative as we continue to push forward on the policy and the legislation, as we continue to push forward on increasing our business acumen, on increasing our access to mentorship, on increasing our patronage within our communities and within our businesses. So until next time, guys, I'm so excited that you were here today. And I thank you so much. And I bless you and peace.